welcome everybody to this full council meeting on the 23rd of March 2026. Get myself comfortable and then we will start. Jonathan, do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've received apologies from councillors Judith Harley, Alex Hollingsworth, Anne Stairs and Diane Regisford, and I note councillors Hosni Jafari Marbini, Amar Latif, Ajaz Rahman and Ed Turner will be late.
Thank you very much. Any others to Councillor Henwood?
I think Councillor Yakeman is going to be late as well, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Smoten?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have late-breaking apologies from Councillor Jupp due to an exam which has run on late, and for Councillor Altaf Khan due to illness.
Thank you. Best wishes to Councillor Altaf Khan for speedy recovery. Councillor Brown?
I don't think I heard Councillor Tiago Correa's apologies mentioned there, but I believe we need to offer them as well.
Thank you. Yes, I think he's got childcare issues. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so that is all apologies. Next is declarations of interest. Any councillors have an interest they wish to declare? Yes, Councillor Jarvis.
This is not a pecuniary interest, but in the interest of transparency in relation to motion C, which explicitly mentions Unite the Union. I'm a member of Unite, and just making that declaration in the interest of transparency. I don't have any decision-making power or formal role within Unite. I'm just a lay member.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Tino?
Ditto, Lord Mayor.
So a number of councillors declaring an interest. Well, not an interest, but are members of Unite. Good. Thank you. Moving on to item 3, minutes of previous cabinet meetings held on the 26th, no, sorry, just of council meetings held on the 26th of January 2026 and the budget meeting on the 23rd of February. Don't know if that's mine. Are we happy to agree the minutes from the meetings held on the 26th of January and the 23rd of February as a true and accurate record?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 4, appointments to committees. Apparently there are none, so we can move straight on to item number 5, which is announcements. Starting with me, first of all, a boring one. Apparently you've all got your new SIM cards in your pigeonholes. Phones will be changed over tomorrow, so you need to go and pick those up today, unless you've had a separate conversation with Democratic Services, which applies to one or two of you, I think. Secondly, it's the Lord Mayor's quiz on Friday, so if you haven't bought your tickets, please do so as soon as possible. Get a team together. Thirdly, I think perhaps the most interesting thing I've done in the last month is a visit to our twin city of Wrocław with a delegation of arts organisations and the Science and Ideas Festival organiser to find new partners, which was really interesting. I travelled at my own expense, for anybody who's worried about that. But we were very well looked after. And we had a tour around the city by a tour guide who remembered Councillor Malik and wanted to send you his best wishes from when you went over at the time of the signings. That's actually a long time ago. That's 8 years ago. Thank you. And finally, just a reminder that we're being filmed today, and it is Sharon's birthday, apparently. So happy birthday, Sharon.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And sorry, Sharon. And then finally, just want to mention we have our new Section 151 officer joining us today, Alistair Rush. Welcome. Very good to meet you. And I hope you're going to enjoy this taste of what's to come for you. I could once again say goodbye to Nigel, who has had had numerous plaudits, and just once again, we are incredibly grateful that you've given so many years of service, looking after us, keeping us on the straight and narrow, and this city has an awful lot to be grateful for. Yeah. So, next item is Deputy Lord Mayor. Do you have any announcements?
One, actually, Lord Mayor. I had the pleasure, while you were otherwise disposed, of going to talk to the art reading volunteers who are present in many schools across the city, probably one in each, at least one in each ward, helping young children learn the joy of reading. And I had the great pleasure of being able to thank the volunteers who work in the primary schools in my own ward, but they are, of course, all equally worthy. They have more than 100 volunteers in the city of Oxford, so I'd like to put on record my thanks to them all here.
Thank you very much. Sheriff, do you have any announcements?
Yes, also just one, probably less worthy and constructive than the Deputy Lord Mayor. As you know, because you were there, Lord Mayor, I had the pleasure and honour to preside over an admission ceremony of 9 new freemen during the week, which was a very enjoyable, if slightly weird ceremony, which was a very enjoyable evening. And the good news for members is that I made them swear not to purloin any tallages. So if any of you have any tallages, you can sleep easy in your bed.
Thank you. It is a very unusual ceremony. Item 4, Leader of the Council. Do you have some announcements to make?
I do, Lord Mayor. I have two separate announcements. The first announcement is about the civic office holders for next year. And I'm delighted to announce that, subject to the normal process of running down the list of people who are have had long service and are willing to do it and able to be supported, we have come up with Councillor Choi Mong Konge for Lord Mayor for next year. So delighted to announce that. And then secondly, I'm delighted to report that you yourself, Lord Mayor, have agreed to be Deputy Lord Mayor next year, which is also fantastic news. And then, yeah, sorry. And then finally, Councillor Linda Smith has kindly agreed to be Sheriff next year. So those are our 3 office holders for next year, subject to the normal process of the annual council in May. So thank you all very much. I am also wanting to make an announcement about the UPP, which I know a number of councillors will be very concerned about. So I thought it would be helpful to make a statement on behalf of the council. So members of this council will be very aware of the campaign to save the UPP, and I wanted to make this statement on behalf of this council about that campaign. The UPP is a great Oxford success story. It's been rescued several times and is a much-loved, beautiful building, but even more importantly, it's a great community resource. Since 2022, the UPP is a community-owned, independent cinema, and after a successful campaign in which over 1,200 local investors bought shares in the Ultimate Picture Palace Community Cinema. The beautiful historic Art Deco building dates from 1911, and it still has the original box office window that opens onto the street. It shows an eclectic mix of independent, mainstream, foreign language and classic films, and is unlike any other cinema in Oxford. It is community owned, and it has been listed as an asset of community value since 2025, and since 1994 it has been Grade 2 listed. I think it's worth quoting some of the wording from the Grade 2 listing on Historic England's website. Historic England, the chair of which body is Lord Neil Mendoza, Provost of Oriel College. The facade, this is the quote from the Historic England, the facade demonstrates the simple layout adopted in early English cinemas of a central external pay box flanked by an entrance and exit door. This example with Roman Doric columns supporting frieze and segmental top fascia board. The interior with simple panelling, once typical of early cinemas. These once common buildings were so primitive as to now be rare. As someone who's been going to the UPP, then the PPP, the penultimate picture palace, since the 1980s, and has fond memories of all-night shows prior to May morning and showings of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, amongst others, I am personally committed to the UPP staying as a community-owned cinema, a view that I know will be shared by many in this chamber and across the city. It appears, unfortunately, that the owners of the site, Oriel College, do not intend to keep it as a community-owned cinema, but I hope that the campaign and the residents of Oxford are able to change their minds and persuade them to give the UPP Community Cinema the longer lease they need in order to invest in the cinema. However, I do need to alert councillors to the fact that it is possible that Oriel College might submit a planning application for a change of use for this site. If they do, for any members that sit on or maybe substitutes for Planning Committee or Planning Review Committee, it is important to be mindful of whether support given to such campaigns will prejudice or be perceived to prejudice the open-minded assessment of any future applications. I do not want a situation where we are not able as a council to determine such an application. Finally, this council wishes the campaign every success and hopes that the UPP has a long and thriving future in Oxford. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Turning to the Chief Executive. No announcements. Chief Finance Officer? Okay. Monitoring Officer? Any announcements? No. In that case, I'd like to invite the City Rector to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Lord Mayor. Thank you, everybody. Many centuries ago, if we were meeting this week, we would be nervous because the 25th of March was about the most nervous day of the year. And that was when tenancies stopped and began, when people were hired and fired, and nobody really knew where they'd be in the next week. Forgive a slightly light entry to what will be a little bit serious in a moment. It was also the 25th of March until 1752. It was the beginning of the new year. And it was only after that was changed to the 1st of January. I'm very conscious, councillors and many who are watching this evening, that we are so aware that across the world, so much sadness and so much evil is happening and has happened in recent times, affecting all ages, children and adults and everyone. And our thoughts and good wishes and prayers are very much with them. One of the ways that we react, and you always, if I may say, react so well, is to keep on travelling with hope and keep on travelling, setting the fine example of good community and inclusion. Here's the light moment at the end. We may know that J.R.R. Tolkien in Lord of the Rings decided that 25th of March would be the day when the Ring of Evil was destroyed. So as we go into this uncertain week, looking at our uncertain world, let us always be people indeed of grief and compassion where appropriate, but people of hope and looking forward in this spring-like new year. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Something uplifting for us. Moving on then to item number 6. Public addresses, I believe there are none relating to matters for decision today. And there's no urgent business either. So we move on to item 8, which is our HRA, Housing Revenue Account policies on electrical safety and Legionella management. I call on Councillor Linda Smith to introduce the report.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This council has already approved HRA policies on damp and mould, fire safety, asbestos and disrepair, and there are 2 more to agree this evening on Legionella and electrical safety. And further policies will be coming thick and fast. I warn you now. These policies are important because they set out clearly and publicly what our tenants, leaseholders and shared owners can expect from us as a landlord to ensure the safety of their homes, providing transparency and allowing residents to hold us to account for the service we provide as their landlord. This council takes the health and safety of our residents extremely seriously, and we are working hard to put everything in place to meet the new rigorous high standards required of us by the regulator of social housing. These standards don't just relate to our responsibilities around compliance, they also cover the critical need to listen and act on the lived experiences of our residents. And there has been a series of meetings with the Residents Policy Review Group, which has amended and approved the policies which are being presented in the report this evening. On electrical safety, this policy addresses the key electrical standards which must be met at all times and ensures that there is an electrical inspection and testing programme consisting of 5 yearly inspections for properties and communal areas. The policy also sets out that there will be a full electrical inspection before reletting a property. And on Legionella, the policy sets out the actions undertaken by the council to protect residents with different tasks varying in required frequency from once a week to once every 5 years, depending on the type and level of risk and the vulnerability of the residents concerned. So I'm asking for your support for the report and these policies this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Do I have a seconder for that?
Formally second.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Right, questions? Anybody, any members of council have a question on this report? No. In that case, I'd like to put the recommendations to the vote. Please can I see all those in favour? Okay, can I see any of those against? And abstentions? Thank you, that is clearly carried. So those recommendations are agreed. Moving on then to item number 9, which is the allocation scheme review. Once again, asking Councillor Linda Smith to introduce it. Thanks.
Thank you. Oxford has a huge housing affordability problem, and we can see the impact everywhere, from potential first-time buyers priced out of our city, to those struggling with rents in the private rented sector, and of course households experiencing homelessness desperate to move on from temporary accommodation. Despite the ambitious programme of this council to build new council homes, demand for social housing is still significantly greater than the supply. We currently have over 3,900 households on our local housing register, so it's absolutely vital that the precious resource of genuinely affordable social housing is allocated both fairly and transparently, and that we are making the very best use of the housing stock that we have available to us. This policy is a result of a thorough review of the allocation scheme to identify improvements and updates based on examples of best practice and new legislation. It's been subject to consultation with council tenants, including prospective council tenants currently in temporary accommodation, other residents, and our partner organisations, including the local housing associations we work with. While improvements have been identified, we've been able to conclude that much of the existing allocation scheme is working well and is well understood. Therefore, it's recommended we stick broadly with the existing system, which has been operating successfully for some time, which, as you will all know, is based on choice-based lettings and 5 bands of housing need priority. There are a small number of areas which have been identified for change in order to better meet housing needs and make the best use of available properties. These are set out in a table on page 124 of our agenda, and I hope they will have the support of all members of the chamber this evening. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Formally second, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. And any questions from members of council? Councillor Fairweather.
Yes, broadly we welcome this report, but there are a couple of points I wanted to ask about. Could the Cabinet member clarify how the proposed new allocation scheme fits in with the damp and mould policy adopted by the Council recently? In particular, I noticed that the word mould only occurs, I think it's twice in the allocation scheme.
Well, we have a separate damp and mould policy where you'll find the word damp and mould repeated many times over. So if you have a look at that, you'll see how seriously we take damp and mould. Emergency cases, like severe cases, we are there investigating it within 24 hours. So it's something we take extremely seriously, even though it's only mentioned, is it once, in this particular paper.
What I was asking about was the allocation scheme seems to me not to pay much attention to this policy, in that it's people who are affected by damp and mould are not automatically their allocation is not automatically increased in this document, it only refers to mould once, and then it talks about management action.
So we don't want any properties to have damp and mould in them. If there is damp and mould in a property, we need to deal with it, regardless of who is living there. So what's important when it comes to damp and mould is keeping people safe. If they have to be decanted while work is done, then that will be done. But what's important is that we deal with the damp and mould and make sure anywhere where people are living is free of damp and mould. But you will see, actually, that this policy, one of the updates, does take into account sort of multiple factors for gaining priority. So, and that's a new thing. So if you take a look, previously you could only be awarded. There are only certain criteria or qualifications for getting priority that could be combined, but now there are more qualifications and criteria for gaining priority which can be compounded, and living in unsuitable accommodation at the moment could be one of those.
Thank you. Sorry,
I had a follow-on question.
Is it a different question? Because you've
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay, here you go.
With the implementation of the Social Housing Act 2023, which came into force last year, with Phase 2 in 2026 and Phase 3 in 2027, will this have any effect on the new allocation scheme?
Just checking, is that your last question?
Yes.
I will ask officers for advice on that and write to you, Councillor Fairweather, rather than give you an off-the-cuff response.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
It's a clarification, please. There's a reference to qualifying tenants living in social housing outside the city who work or need to move to Oxford to take up an offer of work. And if they are unable to do so, it would cause them hardships. There's a point around that. And I'm just wanting to know how far away outside of the city do people have to be living to then have this clause applied to them? Thank you.
I'm not sure that there's a hard and fast rule. I would imagine it's done on a case-by-case basis. But again, I will check that out and get back to you if that's okay, Councillor Miles.
Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, and my apologies. This all looks very good improvements to the scheme. I'm particularly pleased by the first one, which is, as Councillor Smith will know, I've raised with her before, so I'm very pleased to see that. On page 126, making the best use of family housing. I think we are simply making the policy more transparent here, but just for the avoidance of doubt, does that in any way change what our policy is towards families who have children between 18 and 22 living with them?
Not in terms of existing tenants who are living in the existing property, but yes, it does. If they were bidding for a new property, then it does change our policy in respect of allocating new tenancies.
Thank you. Any other questions on this report? Seeing none, I'll put it to the vote. So all those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you. Any against? And any abstentions? Noted. I think we can confirm that those recommendations are agreed. Thank you. And we'll move on to item 10, which is the annual pay policy, which I believe Councillor Chapman is going to introduce.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. This is a legislative requirement that we have an annual pay policy statement in the Council, and it is approved by Council. It reflects the Council's current agreements and arrangements with regard to pay. The first thing I want to highlight is the fact that we have agreed a 2-year local pay agreement with Unison and Unite, effective from the 1st of April in a few days' time. It includes a cost of living pay award of 3.5% or £1,500, whichever is the greater, from 1st of April 26, and a further 3% from the 1st of April 2027. I'd like to thank unions, staff, and everybody involved in these negotiations. I think it is a genuine testament to the long-standing hard work of the leader, the Deputy Leader Ed Turner as well, that we have such cordial and constructive relationships with unions in this organisation. There are many others, and there are some in local government not too far away from here, where that is not the case. So I think that is to be celebrated, and we are very, very grateful for the way in which unions entered into very constructive conversations, and affordable ones, with us about pay. There are a couple of other points I should highlight. One is how staff progress to the highest point of the scale after a 6-month period. Again, this was agreed with unions in the last 12 months, has been implemented back in 2025. And the other questions are around new market allowance policy and procedure. There are a number of jobs in this council which are hard to recruit to, often in the areas of legal, specialist knowledge, environmental health, planning, to give you some examples, where we do need to pay a market supplement, but we do it judiciously, and we do review it from time to time to make sure that it is still valid and appropriate. So this policy paper lays out exactly how we will do that. And finally, we should celebrate the fact that the Oxford living wage, which is set at 95% of the national London living wage, will rise to £14.06 per hour from the 1st of April 2026. Again, along with our constructive relations with unions, I think the fact that we have an Oxford living wage, the fact that more and more employees are taking it up, is a testament to our commitment to tackling poverty in this city, and we should be very proud of it. So on that note, I'm happy to take questions, and I commend the statement and the policy to the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Arshad. Formally? I'm taking it, yeah. Thanks. Thanks. Okay, questions from members? Councillor Taylor.
Oxfordshire County Council don't pay the Oxford living wage. As we're currently undergoing local government reform, what is being done to reassure workers in the event of a single council or unitary authority that they will not have pay cuts and be forced to be paid below the Oxford living wage?
Well, obviously, Councillor Taylor, we don't know the precise arrangements for local government reform, but if I'm right, legally under the law, when staff are tupied across to a new authority, they take their salary and conditions of service with them for a period of time before they can be reassessed or downgraded or even upgraded, but definitely not downgraded. So I think we can take some assurance that all our staff in the City Council here, and also ODS staff who are also covered by this agreement, that their conditions of service and their pay in particular will not be damaged by a transition to a new local government reorganisation model.
Thank you. Any other questions on this report? None? Good. Then I'll put it to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Any against? And any abstentions? No. Unanimous. Great. Thank you. Which takes us on to item 11, which is the questions on the 2 sets of Cabinet minutes. Anybody want to comment or ask questions on the minutes from the 11th of February? No? Anyone have comments or questions on the minutes from the 18th of March? Councillor Smoten.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is with reference to the Integrated Performance Report, and the question is about the unbudgeted excursions in ICT costs, which continue to make for concerning reading. Obviously, the excursions themselves, but also the fact that they are unbudgeted. Can we be assured that we now have a handle on how our ICT costs are expected to evolve over the medium term?
Thank you very much, Councillor Smoten, for that question. The cause of the unbudgeted overspends are in 4 areas, basically. First of all, the biggest element by far is the response to the cyber incident last year, which was obviously unpredictable. And as anybody who knows anything about this area knows, that actually costs can rack up pretty fast when you need to respond quickly to a cyber incident of the kind that we had. I'd be very surprised if anybody in this chamber begrudges that spend, because it means that our systems are safer and better than they were before. A report will be going to Audit Committee in April with all the background to that particular incident and the costs associated with it. There are extra costs around movement to the cloud of our server structure. That was successfully completed last week, so that's a one-off cost which will not occur again next year or in the years ahead. We've had a small extra cost around telephony because the original new supplier of our telephony contract was found not to be appropriate. Therefore, we've had to run double systems for a while. But again, that is a one-off cost that will not appertain next year. And finally, like all large organisations, we are somewhat at the whim of suppliers and those who provide our licences. We can't always predict the costs, and we've had to pay some extra funds in that area. I suspect that will be ongoing because we are entering into 1, 2, 3 year arrangements around those particular licence costs. So unlike the others, which hopefully be one-off things which will not reoccur in the new financial year, that one is with us. But I think in that sense, we're in common with many, many organisations at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Councillor Turner. Hello.
Hello. Sorry to have been late, Lord Mayor, but I was looking forward to this particular question and completely agree with what Councillor Chapman said. Just to say, I think one of the things I try to do when we do our monitoring reports is think about whether our budget process has sort of caught up with what's in them. So are there things, as Nigel was just saying, which look like there'll be an ongoing pressure, or are these sort of genuine ones or one-offs to be reported? And what I understand is that the budget increased ICT expenditure in those areas, which Nigel identified, which will need ongoing expenditure. And much the same applies, for example, for the sort of temporary accommodation side of things as well. So, you know, I feel okay with the budget that we've set going forward, and these should be one-off.
Thank you for that addition. Any other comments or questions? No, good. Okay, we will then move on to item 12, which is the questions on notice to Cabinet members. And we are going to start with those to Councillor Brown. As you know, for each question, the councillor posing it has a chance to ask a supplementary. For SB1, starting with Councillor Brown, so Councillor Stairs isn't here, but there was an indication that maybe supplementary. No. Okay, moving on to SB2. Councillor Muddiman, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you for the response. I agree completely that a mixed use is a very good way to look at this site, very good option for this site. But with 6,000 jobs, over 6,000 jobs, and only 234 residential units, how does this align with the council aspirations to be a 15-minute city?
Thank you, Councillor Muddiman. I think that you'd be hard-pressed to find a site in the whole of the county that is better provided for in terms of a commutable-to-work site, considering its adjacency to the station, the park and ride and Botley Road, and also the bus station and extremely good bus services in from various places around the county. So I don't think it is in the slightest bit surprising to find that it will be a very important employment site for the county.
Thank you. Okay, question SB4. Councillor Gant, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. So, apologies, Lord Mayor, are we not on SB3?
Well, yes, we are. There's a slight typo in my agenda. SB3.
Wishful thinking, Lord Mayor. Yes, thank you. I do have a supplementary to SB3, which, not for the first time, is just to repeat the question, which is contained in the last sentence of my question. The point of this question is that the statement that the leader gave to the Oxford Mail recently directly contradicts an adopted policy passed in her cabinet. How do you reconcile those things?
Well, I would like to refer Councillor Gant to my answer. If he develops an unworkable policy, then I think it's absolutely right that we oppose it on behalf of the City Council.
Now, SB4, do you have a follow-up, Councillor Gant?
Yes, and it's not dissimilar. You know, Councillor Brown said that the county council, of which, by the way, I'm speaking, just to be clear, in my capacity as a backbench opposition member of this council on behalf of my residents, holding the administration to account. But the leader said that the county council ignored the city council. It is on the record, in writing, in your words, in a previous capacity, Lord Mayor, that this administration urged the county council to do what it did, and the leader is now saying the opposite. How do you reconcile those two contradictory positions?
So Councillor Gant, with his county hat on, will be well aware of the fact that this council has sought to work with the county council wherever we can. And it is absolutely true to say that in the past we have had good working relationships with county councillors on transport policy. Regrettably, that has not been the case recently, and although we have tried really hard to come up with common policies across our two councils, that has not been possible. And in the interests of representing people in this city, businesses and residents, and making sure that their views are being heard, we have had to disagree with the county council and a number of their policy implementations in recent years. We have done so, and we have done so again with the introduction of the congestion charge, something that wasn't even discussed with us before it was introduced.
Thank you. Question SB5, Councillor Gant, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, well, I've got good news for the leader, because I can remind her of something where the City Council and the County Council absolutely agreed, hand in glove, because the permit and exemption scheme,
is this going to be a question?
Which is common,
not just a nice surprise.
to the congestion, yes, like the announcements, of course, which are announcements, was designed jointly and signed off. So it was perfectly clear that that is indeed the wish of this council, and you've now changed it. So why didn't you say so at the time?
I'm really sorry, I didn't understand that question at all.
Okay, the permits and exemptions...
Sorry, no, I'm afraid if it wasn't clear enough the first time. Excuse me, have a go. But if you can't, you can't.
Perfectly simple question.
All right, we'll move on.
I don't think I've got anything to add to my statement, which is in answer to his question. I think he's effectively just repeating the question.
Okay, thank you. So, question SB6. Councillor Gant, do you have a follow-up?
No, you'll be pleased to hear I don't.
Indeed. SB7, do you have a follow-up?
Yes. The leader has made a statement that certain policies are not likely to be successful. Those policies are based on data and modelling. What modelling did she use to base her analysis on?
I think we were discussing in this question the county council's transport policies. I find it slightly surprising that I need to remind Councillor Gant that at the moment this council is not the transport authority and therefore isn't making transport policies and doesn't provide evidence bases for transport policies that it is not making. It responds to the county council's transport policies and expresses the views of residents and businesses in this city.
Thank you. Okay, question SB9. Councillor Gant, do you have a follow-up?
Sorry, I think it's 7, isn't it? 7. SB7?
SB7?
Yes.
No, we've done 7 at least once.
We seem to, I think we've got to 7.
Oh, we've got 2 SB7s in the list here. Sorry. Okay. Second one.
Sorry.
Yes.
SB7B.
7B. Okay.
Yes, well, again, good news that the councillor says that she responds to proposals from other bodies and the basis on which they are projected. So I'll once again repeat my question. Does the City Council welcome the projected reduction in casualties by 28 per year as a direct result of the congestion charge and traffic filters?
Of course, I would welcome any reduction in the number of casualties on our roads, but I am also aware, as I have expressed in my answer to the original question, that there is considerable doubt that has been expressed about the robustness of the projected data within the report that he talks about. And indeed, I have to say, I don't really understand what it is based on, other than wishful thinking. So I personally will wait until we've heard about real reductions, and at that point I will absolutely welcome them. But those will only be measurable over time, rather than projections based on very little.
Thank you. Then are we on SB8 now? Good. Okay. Do you have a follow-up for that?
Yes, I do. Thank you for the answer, which unfortunately shows a bit of a misunderstanding about what the traffic filters which her Cabinet endorsed do and why they are designed in the way that they are, which is disappointing but probably not surprising. But in this case, you know, this council has proposed a new policy of giving exemptions to a large number of people. So I assume that a responsible council would not adopt a policy of that position, like that, without modelling it or testing it. Did you do that? What did the modelling say?
I refer the councillor to my previous answer.
Right, and moving on then to SB9.
Yes, you refer elsewhere to, you know, objectives which everybody shares to improve bus services, and you talk about targeting things like fares and routes and timetables. Do you agree with me that the single most important factor in speeding up timetables and routes is tackling congestion?
I think that there are a number of factors which will encourage more people to use the bus, and the thing that I hear most frequently from people is actually the cost. So I think that there's a significant problem with the cost of bus fares, particularly for families, and I do think that it's extremely regrettable that the County Council have chosen to only subsidise people outside the city, therefore those people using the park and ride with free bus travel, and not anyone who actually resides within the city. So that would be my answer.
Thank you. Question SB10. Councillor Gant, do you have a follow-up?
Well, yes, just to say that, of course, I'm very well aware of where the boundaries of the City Council are, but does the leader accept that when she was asked this directly by the Oxford Mail, she wasn't able to say what boundaries were being used for her definition of residents of the city?
Was there a question in there?
Yes, it was, does the leader accept that the answer she gave here is not the one she gave when she was asked the same question by the Oxford Mail?
I frankly don't remember what the question I was asked by the Oxford Mail, because I get asked a lot of questions by the Oxford Mail, but what I'm sure I would have said is that we are not in the business of making transport policy for an authority that does not exist. So what we are doing is responding to the County Council's transport policies on behalf of the existing City Council.
Question SB11. Councillor Gant.
Yes, this is an important one, Lord Mayor, so thank you for the opportunity to ask a supplementary. At last, having asked this many times, I now have it in writing that the Labour group of the City Council and the Labour group of the County Council don't talk to each other and don't agree their policies, which has been obvious for years.
Sorry, this is
but
you're
now
getting
it's
very
in
political
writing.
here, and that's not. We're not actually making a question here.
So
could we? I think we'll probably have to go on to the next one. Thank you. Sorry, I'm being told we should move on to the next one. So we will move on to. I'm just going to ask the monitoring officer.
Councillor Gant, you can ask your question, but as we have discussed prior to council, it must not relate to political parties specifically. So feel free to direct a question to the leader as leader of the council, but it is not the place to be asking things of political groups.
Okay, Councillor Gant, do you think you can ask a question that follows those rules as your follow-up for SB 11?
Yes. Will you instruct members of the administration and its supporting backbenchers to wholly and solely support the policies of this council?
Sorry, what? Sorry, which question are we on? SB 12?
11.
11, sorry, right, okay, 11. I don't instruct anybody in this chamber. That is not my position. I represent this council in various different ways. I speak for this council in various different ways. I speak for the residents of Oxford in various different ways, but I don't make it my business to go around instructing members.
Thank you. Okay, question SB 12. Councillor Gant, do you have a follow-up?
I've tried, so no.
Okay. Thank you. And SB 13.
Yes, now this is another important one. Congestion reduction underpins the introduction of the wonderful fleet of 172 buses on our streets. That congestion reduction is delivered by the policies that this administration has chosen to oppose. How do you reconcile that policy with that fact?
I refer Councillor Gant to my response to his question, which is that his administration on the County Council have chosen to impose the congestion charge on the City of Oxford, and they took no account of the views of the City Council, residents or businesses in Oxford.
Right, question SB 14. Councillor Rawle, do you have a follow-up?
I do, thank you. Firstly, to say thank you, but an update, the works have now taken place, but I think that residents would still be really grateful if the leader of the council would be still willing to write to Thames Water just to raise the amount of time that residents are waiting, not having clear, reassuring updates, and to raise in general resident concerns about repeated pipe leaks in this area and across Oxford, and the impacts that might have on their lives in the worst cases.
I'm happy to do so. If there's anything further that you want me to include in that letter, then please let me know.
Right, we are now going to move on to questions to Councillor Turner, our Cabinet Member for Finance and Asset Management. We have two. ET1, Councillor Ross-Smith, do you have a follow-up? ET2, Councillor Fairweather, do you have a follow-up?
Since November, are we to believe that only an additional £7,000 has been spent? The many videos of the leader extolling the virtues of the three council scheme must have used all of that £7,000, surely, not to mention the amazing wallpaper on council laptops. I request that the Cabinet Member produce a proper and audited list of expenditure for circulation to all members of this council.
Thanks, Sir Councillor. I think that was a question, and it's nice to get a go, not just the councillors to our, sitting next to us. That's good. So first of all, thanks for the compliments as well about the campaign. I mean, I absolutely concur. I think our officers have done a really, really good job drawing attention to this. A lot of people stop me in the street and say, hey, Ed, what's going on? What's this all about local government reorganisation? And something which could easily have been, an abstract government consultation has instead really been brought to life. And I have to say, as someone who's a bit of a social media Luddite, I think, the way this brilliant team of officers has been ahead of the curve in understanding the potential of new technologies and how to communicate with communities has been terrific. So although I'm not sure that was quite the thrust of the councillor's question, I would put on record my appreciation for it. In terms of a breakdown of expenditure, sure, I mean, that, of course, breakdown of expenditure can be given. The request previously from the councillor was instead just, why had this not gone to Cabinet? And the answer is provided there. But no, I mean, if there's wider curiosity, I'm sure we can sate that as well.
Okay, we're now moving on to questions to our Cabinet Member for a Zero Carbon Oxford. Starting with AR1, Councillor Miles, do you have a follow-up? You, AR2, Councillor Goddard.
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. Thanks very much for the response, Councillor. Can I sort of get in two questions? One, do you have a sense of when the findings and inspection, which you referred to, will be available? And in the event that any local people thought there were works required on the Upper Wolfcote Green Place, would it be okay if I communicate with you about that?
So yes, on the second point, of course, yes. On the first point about the actual sort of like detailed inspection report, I obviously do not have that to hand, but I think, yeah, we can sort that out offline.
Okay, question AR3, Councillor Miles, do you have a follow-up on that one? AR4, Councillor Muddiman.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can you tell me, will the Ecological Clerk of Works work for the developer, i.e. the City Council, or will they be an independent Clerk of Works?
So I do not know the answer to that question. My expectation would be that it be one of the city ecologists that we employ, but I do not know for certain, so I guess I can clarify that. Yeah.
Thank you. AR5, Councillor Muddiman, do you have a follow-up to that one?
Yes. I'm sure you're aware that the Westgate are in the process of, I think, still the process of recruiting a new manager. So will you go back and talk again to the new manager of the Westgate about this idea?
I'm sure we can do that. I mean, as I've sort of like laid out in this, we can talk to them, but there is no expectation that, it is up to them. We can talk to them, but they don't have to listen, essentially.
Thanks. Question AR6, Councillor Muddiman, do you have a follow-up for this one? Yep. AR7.
Short and sweet, yes or no. Do you support the bus filters?
Not in their current form.
Question AR8, Councillor Powell, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. So I thank the Cabinet Member for her response, and I take the point that we are not the Highways Authority. But just for clarity, reading her response, can she confirm that it is the position that the Council appreciates that not proceeding with these measures would require us to be less ambitious on tackling pollution in the city? That seems to be the implication of her answer, so it's a simple yes or no question.
Not really. I mean, I don't really sort of take the kind of implication of that. I mean, there are lots of things that could move the needle on this, not in our control. There could be an intensely sort of stringent EV mandate, for example. For example, if the county council decided to, ban cars inside the ring road, that would have an incredible effect on our air quality in the city, but I don't expect that's going to happen, nor will have any support. So I think that's my answer to that.
Thank you. And then AR9, Councillor Ganson, no longer here for a follow-up. So we move on to questions to the Cabinet Member for a Safer Oxford. LA1, Councillor Powell, do you have a follow-up?
No supplementary on that one.
How about for LA2?
Yes, I thank the Cabinet Member for her response. Purely just to ask, does she appreciate that given the orientation of the current government, saying that policy approaches will be aligned to national government policies might be cold comfort to many communities across Oxford?
That's over to you, Councillor Barshard.
That's no.
Thank you. LA3, Councillor Powell, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. I thank the Cabinet Member for her response. Can she confirm that any engagement with immigration enforcement will be strictly limited to that which the law requires.
Yeah.
Thank you. And LA4, Councillor Powell, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you, but thank you for the response.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to questions to the Cabinet Member for Citizen-Focused Services and Council Companies. NC1, Councillor Smoten, do you have a follow-up?
No follow-up to this one, thank you.
Thank you. NC2, Councillor Miles, do you have a supplementary?
I do, and thank Councillor Chapman for the update. So at the moment, when toilet doors or toilets are out of order, can you hear? Yeah. So when the toilets at Diamond Place are out of order, of which there are a number that you refer to in your written response, the ODS place a sign on the door using sticky tape. After having got the Neighbourhood Forum to repaint the toilet doors fairly recently, this is causing significant damage to the paintwork, and I know eventually these will be replaced, but could you please explore with ODS whether they could find an alternative, less paint-destroying approach for the toilet signage where they are saying it's out of order, please? Thank you.
That's a very interesting question, and I will be exploring it with them tomorrow, now that you've asked me to do so, as I have a meeting about a whole number of things with them.
Thank you. Moving on to NC3 then. Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. The question was about new bin lorries in a kind of, and lorries in procurement, and the answer is about existing stock. So I just wanted to kind of clarify whether we have any, legislation, rules, perspectives as to when we are procuring new HGVs, as to whether they should have vision standards that will mean that they won't effectively kill cyclists. So that's the question. I just think the answer doesn't quite match the question. So it's a procurement question, not a what do our existing bin lorries do question. Make sense?
It makes sense. I think it depends on how you interpret all ODS bin lorries are fitted with. That means now and in the future. Okay? That's the way I read it to mean. So we will always want to comply with the highest standards. They're very, very conscientious about this. If standards change, and hopefully they'll get higher and better, then any new lorries and existing ones, we will be endeavouring to make sure that it complies with them.
Can I clarify the direct vision point or not?
Sorry?
Because MOIS isn't the best standard. Direct vision is the London standard.
No, you can't. Sorry.
Fine. Okay. Thank you.
Write to him separately. Thank you. Okay, then moving on to NC4. Councillor Powell, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. I thank the Cabinet Member for his response. I'd just like to flag specifically that the out-of-order facilities include the accessible facilities at Mansell Way. As a council committed to inclusivity, would he undertake to prioritise looking specifically at that one of the facilities? I appreciate the general point and all of the difficulties, but I do think that's important to flag as a particular issue.
Yes, in a word.
Thank you. Okay, question NC5. Councillor Powell, do you have a supplementary on this one?
No, thank you.
Okay, NC6. Councillor Rule? No, thank you. Right, then we're moving to questions for the Cabinet Member for Planning and Culture who is not here. I think Councillor Brown will attempt to answer any supplementaries that come. So, AH1, Councillor Mundy, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. So, who's answering this question, sorry? Okay, thank you. So I hope you can answer this question. So I've got it on good authority that almost none of the recommendations for ideas to increase revenue were given resources to trial them. My question to the Cabinet Member would say that this includes room hire, pay what you can, that's in donations both at the shop but also in ticketing, audio guides and activities including soft play and games. My question is, if no resource is given to these ideas to increase revenue, then how can the Cabinet Member state that ways of increasing revenue were trialled and given a fair trial? And if resource was committed for ideas, which ideas specifically were resources committed to? Thank you.
I think I would have to give a written answer to that question because you're introducing information or allegations at any rate that I am not familiar with. So I'll get you a written answer to that question.
Thanks. Okay, AH2, Councillor Mundy, do you have a supplementary?
Yep, this one might be a bit easier, hopefully. So this is in relation to Templar Square, obviously at the site owners Redevco. So is Redevco the only site owner for the area of Templar Square and John Allen Centre? And if there are any other landowners that we need dealing with, or indeed if there's any of the land that's owned by the council, are there any other avenues that we need to pursue in order to discuss redevelopment of the site?
So the City Council is the leaseholder, but or the owner, but Redevco are the main people that we are talking to about the site.
Okay. Question AH3, Councillor Mundy, have you got a supplementary on this one?
I don't have any more questions.
Okay, great. So not for AH4 either. Thanks. AH5, Councillor Yateman, do you have a follow-up?
No, Hank.
Thanks. AH6.
Yes, please. Will any of the existing covered market traders face higher rents as a result of the redevelopment? And if so, how many?
The rent policy for the covered market is something that is regularly, well, not regularly revisited, but is revisited and taken sort of through proper processes. I would not expect that the redevelopment of the covered market is an influencing factor on that rent policy. There is a budget that the council has invested in the refurbishment and of the covered market, quite separate to the leasing strategy.
Thanks. Okay, AH7, Councillor Henwood, have you got a follow-up for this one?
No supplementary from me, Chair, and also I thank the Cabinet holder for the responses through to AH9. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we go straight on to AH10. Councillor Kerr, do you have a follow-up? AH11, Councillor Mudderman.
Thank you. Can you confirm, I understand that the contract is now, for the Oxfordshire Bridge has now also been signed by the City Council as of today, is that right?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
AH12.
Yes. The question asked for evidence about demand for life science buildings, and the response says that there is considerable demand for new space. Could we have a little bit more? Considerable is a little bit vague. Could we have can we have some numbers?
I think the response refers you to the Oxford Employment Lands Needs Assessment, which sets it all out.
Okay, thank you. AH13, Councillor Mudderman, do you have one for this? Oh, thanks. Okay, AH14, Councillor Mudderman. Or for 15? AH16, Councillor Powell, do you have one?
Yes, please. I thank the Cabinet member for his response, but I know he's not here to respond here. Just a very, very brief thing here. Can I just get a confirmation that all of the disclosures are strictly required by law, i.e. there are no voluntary disclosures being made?
I'd have to get you a written answer to that one. I'm not sure that I can give you that without checking.
Thanks. So we've got to follow up on that then. AH17, Councillor Powell.
No, thank you, and no thank you for 18 as well, but thank you for the responses.
Great. AH19, Councillor Rule.
No further questions, also all the way up to AH24.
Thank you. AH25 then, Councillor Robinson.
I was going to ask one, but it's a detailed one about the budget, so I'm not sure if Councillor Brown will be able to answer it. Therefore, yeah, but thank you for the responses.
Okay, thank you then. We will move on to questions for the Cabinet Member for a Healthy Fair at Oxford and our Small Business Champion. So CM1, Councillor Fairweather, do you have a supplementary?
Sorry, just let me catch up with the...
It's about basketball courts.
No further questions.
Thanks. Councillor Gant's not here, so we go to CM3. Councillor Miles, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, it's really just a question since this was published a week ago. Do we have any firm assurances yet on the opening day of Hinksey Pool, please?
Not yet, but we're anticipating mid-May. Thank you.
Right, moving on then to questions to the Cabinet Member for Housing and Communities. LS1, Councillor Smoten, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Lord Mayor. I'm quite surprised by the statement in the answer that the large glut of right-to-buy cases, it looks like a sort of about 3 or 4 years worth or so, had been cleared by January 25. Because I'd received correspondence from a person who'd applied to buy their council home in November 2024 and was still waiting for formal paperwork last month. I think that specific case has now been resolved, but nonetheless appears to have taken a bit over a year and a quarter. Are you familiar with such extraordinary delays brought about by the rush of home purchases that happened after the Chancellor's changes?
No.
Thank you. Okay. Question LS2 then. Councillor Mundy, do you have a supplementary?
No.
Okay, LS3, Councillor Henwood, do you have one?
I would like to thank the Cabinet Holder for a very clear response. I do appreciate in a very short paragraph she's answered who, what, where and when in a very clear and succinct answer. Thank you.
Councillor? Sorry, I was being distracted, so I didn't hear. Was that a question and are you going to answer it? It wasn't a question. Okay, we'll move on then. Thank you. LS4, Councillor Mundy, do you have a supplementary?
No, I'll be following up by email with the precise case. Thank you.
Great, thanks. LS5, Councillor Powell.
No, and similarly not for 6 either. Thank you for the responses. It's good to hear.
Great. How about 7 and 8?
7, no, and 8. Sorry, I've got the numbering is a bit different here.
Yeah,
there's no 8.
This is at 7. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I do have a follow-up for 7, if that's okay. Yeah, thank you very much for the response. I do appreciate that we don't collect the data. Obviously, given the state of the housing crisis in the city, would the Cabinet Member undertake to write to providers of student housing and ask them about their occupancy rates? Because I do think there are causes for concern given what we're seeing in other cities and the broader landscape, and it would be useful to know.
No, I won't be doing that. I don't think that's part of my portfolio. You might want to speak to the Cabinet Member for planning, possibly, in terms of the relationship that we have in terms of making sure students are accommodated in purpose-built accommodation, but I don't think that falls within my remit.
Thank you. That concludes our questions to Cabinet Members. So I suggest that before the break, and we will take all the public speakers after the break, but before the break now, we will take items sort of 15, 16 and 17 to get those done. So if that's okay with councillors presenting the reports, Councillor Monkongwe, are you happy to present the report, the partnership report on the Oxfordshire Children's Trust Board and the Council's work for children and young people living in the city?
Yes, Your Lord Mayor.
Thanks.
I'm pleased to introduce this report to you on the Oxfordshire Children's Trust Board and the Council work to support children and young people across our city. Members are actually asked to note its content. Through the Children's Trust Board and wider partnership, we work collaboratively to improve health, well-being and outcomes for children and young people across Oxfordshire. This council has done great to support our partnership, but also other things that is listed in the report just to improve the well-being of our children. The council strengthens local partnership, invests in youth funding, and delivers inclusive leisure and play opportunities. And of course, supports education and community programs to help young people thrive. However, there's a key challenges that remains: improving the SEND services. Obviously, we as a city council and other district councils that are members of the Children Trust Board, we are doing our utmost best to help our partners to improve the SEND services. So I recommend this report to the council to note it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Turner.
Actually, it was more of a comment, if that's all right. Yeah, but no, thanks for. I'm grateful to Jamie for tabling this. We maybe just to mention, I was the only councillor there. We had a wonderful 15th birthday party of Rose Hill Junior Youth Club on Saturday. Absolutely lovely, teaming in the community centre, and that's been an organisation we as the City Council have supported over many years financially and in kind, and it's linked really, really well with Youth Ambition, which is such a positive thing. And looking over this report, it did remind me just how much we as a council are doing, district council are doing in this space. And of course, most district councils don't get involved in youth work, and it's an upper and single tier responsibility, but it's something we've done. And I think, reflecting on it, one of the great things about the Junior Youth Club is that it's been really responsive to local priorities. So, for example, when there were some youngsters who were at risk of going off the rails, there was some immediate action to support the mentoring programme, flex some of the activities, and I think that was possible because it was locally rooted. I think another thing which I'm really struck by is the inclusion, and that means they work really, really hard to include children who might have additional needs and try and be as supportive as they can there. And that's important. Also, it's for the whole community, yeah? So a lot of youth work, as I understand it now, is quite targeted on those that need the support the most, and I understand that. But actually, what in Albany used to be called sort of general needs youth work is also really, really lovely. It means that youngsters from a range of backgrounds get to come together and play, and it's absolutely glorious. So I'm really, really glad we're in that space. And if I had a question, it would be whether Cheve sees any sense that there will be more opportunities for that general needs youth work from the County Youth Service, as well as some of the targeted stuff, which quite understandably it does.
Yes, thanks, Ed. There will be more opportunities. I think it also highlights this as an example of the Youth Hub, where we could work in partnership with the council and other partners to deliver that. So we're always open for opportunities, and I believe genuinely if we put our minds to it, there are more opportunities to come.
Thank you. Any other questions on this report? No? Great, then I'm just asking you to... Oh, sorry, Councillor Miles, yes.
Thank you. I noted that the Parks and Accessible Play features as a section within the report, and I just wondered whether in future versions of this you think it would be possible to provide an update to the city centre playground proposals going forward. Thank you.
Yes, we will. Obviously, I did work closely to this, including the Lord Mayor, first when it was brought to our attention, but obviously we'll keep this. It's a rolling work between different partners, as you know. So yes, we'll keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? No, then please I'd just ask you all to note this report, and we'll move on and ask Councillor Brown to introduce the report on the Oxford Strategic Partnership.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And first of all, I'd like to thank officers who pulled the report together, but I particularly wanted to thank Paul James, the Chief Executive Officer of the River Learning Trust, who has been very ably chairing the Oxford Strategic Partnership for the last few years. And also to all those people from many different organisations around the city and indeed the county who give up their time to form part of the Oxford Strategic Partnership. It's been going a long time, but it does regularly review its priorities, And essentially, it's there to kind of support support the work of the City Council, but to make sure we are reaching out into those other partnership organisations and helping, allowing them to help us and us to help them to deliver the City Council's priorities. The report sort of sets out what the OSP does and indeed what it has been doing most recently last year. So it's important, I think, to remind people here, if they weren't already aware, that it has 4 subgroups which are focused on economic development, stronger communities, zero carbon Oxford partnership and safer communities, and you can see that those fit well with the Council's priorities. So the Economic Development Steering Board subgroup has brought together business and has enabled business to really be an important partner in working with us on our economic strategy, and that's been really important to us. The Stronger Communities subgroup has been going a very long time, and it brings together all the partners that you might hope that would be working on stronger communities, from OCVA, the County Council and Public Health, to try and make sure that we are working together to develop stronger communities and address inequality and poverty, and also to focus on health and well-being. Zero Carbon Oxford Partnership subgroup was set up as a result of the Citizens' Assembly on Climate Change, and again, it's showing this council leading the way. We have subsequently enlarged the membership of that partnership, and it is now county-wide, but its secretariat functions are still provided by Oxford City Council, and it absolutely builds on the work that has been done by this City Council to develop a roadmap and action plan to deliver the requirements of the Oxford Citizens' Assembly on Climate Change, and indeed the desires of the rest of the county as well. Safer Communities subgroup has also been around for a very long time, and we've had separate reports, I think, on that to this council. And I'm sure that the budget that we agreed in February will be very welcomed by that group, by the fact that we are introducing community wardens back into the city. And I think, tackling not just crime but antisocial behaviour remains a focus of this council, but also that subgroup. So I think that is probably all I want to say at this point. Happy to do my best to answer questions, but I am very happy with the work of the OSP, and as I said, would very much like to thank them.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I can see several questions. So Councillor Miles, then Fairweather, then Mundy.
Thank you. So I note that there's a budget assigned to this, which is £6,320. What is this used for? Is it in terms of proportion spent on staff time and other costs? And how many kind of people days then is allocated to support this process? Thank you.
I imagine that's just the secretariat costs for supporting it. It would be, it can't be more than that on that amount of money.
Thank you. Councillor Fairweather. You asked about how many days. I'm sure Susan's not going to be able to answer that. We can follow that up, get that to you. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Where does the Oxford Strategic Partnership fit with the Oxford Growth Commission, the Oxford to Cambridge Growth Corridor and the Greater Oxford Development Corporation? Does the leader agree that this is a case of bureaucratic overload?
I could just say no, and I am tempted to, but no, and I will add a little bit more to it. These are all bodies that have important and rather different, but sometimes integrated aims and strategies. So the Oxford Growth Commission, for instance, reports into the OSP, or certainly reports to the. It's not formally reporting, but there is conversation, shall we say, between the Oxford Growth Commission and the OSP. They take an interest in the work of the Oxford Growth Commission. The Oxford Growth Commission recommended, or is likely to recommend, the Oxford Development oh, I've got what the word is now. Sorry, tired. Commission. So that is something that we will see whether what comes forward in terms of plans for that over time. But it is going to potentially be an important part of the developing of Greater Oxford, and in its widest possible sense. And all of that, I think, fits very well with the aims of the Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor, which is about making sure that we have sustainable growth within Oxford and Cambridge, recognising the fact that there are incredibly strong economies at both ends of the growth corridor and indeed through the middle of it, but wanting to make sure that that development is sustainable, and we're making sure that it is fully inclusive. And I think one of the other really important partnerships that the Oxford Strategic Partnership has within it is the Oxfordshire Inclusive Economic Partnership. And again, something that was founded by this council, because we take a very strong interest in making sure that our economy is properly inclusive, and that people in our city are benefiting from our very strong economy.
Thank you. Councillor Mundy.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. So in relation to Zero Carbon Oxford, point 49 refers to enabling organisations to take urgent steps within their own operations in relation to climate action and decarbonisation. I just wonder if the Cabinet member can explain whether the Council under the Labour Group is setting an example in that regard when it comes to their own policy and their own dialogue as to what our local authority can be doing and what we can be supporting to decarbonise and have a zero carbon city. Thank you.
I certainly do think we have been setting a good example on that front. We've done a lot to decarbonise our property. I would refer the councillor to the work that we've done in our leisure centres. We are constantly looking at ways in which we can further decarbonise our housing stock and other buildings. We have led the way on all sorts of different measures, and I would refer him to the very good work of the Zero Carbon Oxford Partnership, which my colleague Anna Elton has ably led on more recently. So I think the answer to his question is yes.
Thank you. Any other questions on this report? No. In that case, can you all please note it? And we will move on to item 17, where I think Councillor Powell is going to introduce the report, Scrutiny Committee update.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. It's been a bit of a busy period for the Scrutiny Committee, and obviously not having given an update at the previous full council due to the let's say, forestalling over to this meeting, I'm reporting on quite a number of matters, ranging from devolution on the 2nd of December to nighttime economy and fly tipping on the 10th of March. During that time, Scrutiny's made a total of 41 recommendations, although 10 of those are from the Budget Review Group, which has also taken place during that period. 24 of these were agreed by Cabinet, 7 were partially agreed, and 5 were not agreed. And I think broadly we've had some really, really useful dialogue around various matters. I'd like to particularly foreground the Scrutiny Commissioned items. So we saw Scrutiny Commission reports on the nighttime economy and fly tipping at the most recent meeting. And I think, given the leader's remarks about the UPP, it's really important to note that within the nighttime economy work, councillors were really, really keen to stress the value of community spaces. So I welcome her remarks at the start of this meeting. I think in addition to that, it's been a period where obviously we've seen discussions around devolution and the shape of the future governance of the city. So broadly, I think the Scrutiny Committee's been acting in a very, very effective way. I'd like to take this opportunity at the last full council meeting of the municipal year to say a really sincere thank you to the officer team. So particularly to Celeste and also to Hannah and Jonathan. And obviously there will be a firmer report at the following the annual council, but still I felt it was really, really important to say. So thank you all for all of the support. I know how busy it's been. I'd also like to thank all of the Cabinet members who've given up their time to come to scrutiny meetings. I know some of the questioning's been particularly long. I think particularly for Councillor Hollingsworth, who's not here to hear hear my thanks, but I know we've kept him there for a very long time. I think I'll leave it with that, and obviously open to any questions that members might have.
Thank you very much, Councillor Powell. Any questions? Okay, Councillor Malik, then Jarvis, then Miles.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I want to pick up a question on the nighttime economy, actually. On 37, 38, 39 point in your report, you talk about where nighttime economy like Cavley Centre, Botley Industrial Estate could also improve. My question is, why the Scrutiny Committee haven't given any thought improving the nighttime economy in the city centre? Because when you look at it, you've got 30,000 students in the city, and when you talk about, obviously I have to declare my interest, I'm a taxi driver, which I drive daytime now, but talking to taxi driver, the kebab vans and the other eatery places which affect the nighttime economy, most of the clubs or entertaining places are closed in the city centre. And whichever way you look at it, either is to do with the council policy or the university landlords, etc. So this is a one thing. Equally, I mean, you talk about nighttime economy improvement in Cavley Centre, which is great and good for the Botley, but is the Scrutiny Committee ever thought about how to improve the nighttime economy in the city centre? Because no disrespect to any of your councillors, if you go nighttime after 10, 11 o'clock, it depends how many people can leave their cosy living room and go and look in the city centre. So the city centre nightlife or nighttime economy is dying, if you ask. Okay, we beat about our growth and everything, but it's good for the intellectual people and the very well educated. So the local people who supposed to be working in these eateries and so on will be.
Thanks, Councillor Malik. I think he's got the question there.
Yeah,
Have you considered the nighttime economy in the city?
Yeah, there is another one after that.
So, I mean, just to obviously in terms of process, with a Scrutiny Committee commissioned item, we received a report from the Cabinet member, and the reason that many of our questions focused on these other areas is because we felt that the focus of the original report was overly on the city centre area. So it's not that we weren't considering things in the city centre area, it's that the report given by Cabinet was, in our view, potentially overly focused there, or at least we felt like it was important to consider the wider areas. And I think actually if you look at the plan put forward by the Cabinet member in terms of what is to be done, it does very much consider the city centre, and I think it is already involved in the work the Council's doing to think about the city centre.
Thanks. Okay, Councillor Jarvis was next.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Apologies, Alex, I have an extremely specific question, which is in relation to recommendation 5 on the nighttime economy in table 4 of the recommendations from the March Scrutiny Committee meeting in the appendix. So my question is, this is in relation to safe travel home for late night workers. And my question is whether you feel that the recommendation was an accurate reflection, the recommendation that went to Cabinet was an accurate reflection of the discussion at the Scrutiny Committee meeting. I ask because the specific request that I think Scrutiny had put in was for the Cabinet to engage with both employers and trade unions, and that's not mentioned either in the recommendation in the report or in the Cabinet response. And so do you think that that would that reflects the position of the Scrutiny Committee, and would you seek the relevant Cabinet member to respond to engaging with trade unions on this?
Thank you very much for the question. So I've just hurriedly scribbled through the 41 recommendations to find the exact wording. I think you are correct in, as a member of the Scrutiny Committee, observing that seems that wording specifically pertaining to trade unions did not make it into the final recommendation, when on a fair reflection of the discussion it definitely should have. That is obviously ultimately an omission on my part, for which I apologise, and I will be happy to email the Cabinet member to seek some specific further follow-ups regarding the role of trade unions in the process.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Thank you. First of all, for the record, I think we need to thank Councillor Alex Powell anyway for his skillful and inclusive approach to chairing the Scrutiny Committee. So thank you very much for that this year. The second point I've got, which is last year we agreed as Scrutiny that there will be a summary of the urgent decisions that were taken that the Scrutiny Chair has to sign off on when the administration is pushing forward for urgent decisions that don't go through full council, and the normal call-in period. And so can you provide assurances that this will be included in a summary in the annual report at next meeting? Thanks.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, I will follow up with the officers and ensure that that is in the report.
Thank you. Good. Any more questions on the Scrutiny Committee report? No. Good. In that case, please note it. And we will now break for something to eat. If you could all be back here by 7, please. We'll try and restart a minute or two after 7. Right, welcome back everyone. We will start with item 13, the public addresses. So I think we'll be getting our first speaker coming through soon. Which is Emily. Welcome, Emily.
Hello.
Thank you. You've got 5 minutes to speak to us.
Thank you. I won't need
Thanks.
that much. Oh, sorry. So a scooter rider was recently seriously injured after hitting a pothole on Oxford Road in Old Marston, as I'm sure you'll all be aware. Local residents have said that the same pothole had already in fact been filled twice this year prior to that incident. And having visited the site myself since, I can see that the repair carried out after the accident is already beginning to fail. So for me, this raises serious concerns that when potholes do materialise across the city, they're not always being repaired in a durable way, but are instead being shoddily patched, allowing the same defect to reappear within a short space of time and go on to require further repair, wasting public money. My understanding is that this particular road's maintenance is delivered through the council's contract with ODS, and my apologies in advance because I think I may have got this slightly wrong. So with that in mind, please could the appropriate council member explain what contractual mechanisms the council has in place with ODS to ensure that pothole repairs are carried out to a good and long-lasting standard, and crucially on top of that, how the council is contractually enabled to hold this contractor accountable, including through financial penalties when the same defects require repeated repair within short periods of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was short and sweet.
Yeah.
And I believe Councillor Chapman has a response.
Emily, thank you very much for your address. I appreciate that. And I'm sure the whole council is aware of the unfortunate accident involving the scooter rider George Balkwill in Old Marston last month, which you referred to. And we all want to wish him a very speedy recovery. Like many others, I watched the video of the accident and I feel every sympathy for what happened to George. In my view, citizens have every right to expect their roads to be safe, and there are not potholes of the kind which featured in this accident present on them. Now, this winter's prolonged and heavy rainfall has significantly worsened the condition of our roads, contributing to an increase in potholes. Wet and cold conditions also make timely and durable repairs more challenging. I share everyone's frustration about the impact of this dreadful weather. I want to go on now to explain the arrangements between the County Council and our Oxford Direct Services who repair minor roads and paths within Oxford. So the County Council provides an annual budget and agrees a work plan directly with ODS for the repair of those roads and paths. It sets down the standards of work it expects and the time frame in which that work will be carried out. Now, in the case of the pothole which caused the accident in Marston, this was inspected and booked for repair, but continued to deteriorate. It was repaired well within the time frame the County Council expects for potholes of this scale and nature. ODS always aims to carry out repairs to the required standard and as quickly as possible. However, I fully recognise this will be of little consolation to Mr. Balkwill, the scooter driver who was involved in this accident. ODS's approach is to deliver a durable, right first-time repair of all potholes. Each defect is assessed to determine the appropriate treatment, considering factors such as size, depth, location, traffic loading, and underlying condition. Where a permanent repair is required, it ensures that the defect is properly prepared, cut out to a sound material, cleaned and reinstated using suitable materials, and compaction techniques designed to achieve long-term performance, not a temporary fix. Since the accident, ODS has been back to check the quality of the repair and is satisfied it fulfills this criteria. Over recent weeks, ODS has increased the number of crews out repairing potholes to 4. During February, the crews dealt with 719 defects on Oxford minor roads. They also received 588 reports via Fix My Street, the most ever in a single month. Oxfordshire County Council provides ODS with this annual budget to repair all Oxford's minor roads. This core budget has not increased in recent years, while costs have gone up significantly. This year, ODS has proactively sought and secured an additional one-off sum to help with this challenging situation. We are in continued conversations with the County Council for additional funding to address wider needs, not just pothole repairs. Given the scale of the problems we face, including the underlying state of our roads and pavements, it is clear to me that this budget is only scratching the surface. I know of minor roads in my own ward where they need root and branch renewal, not just pothole repairs. So I urge the County Council to see what it can do to increase this budget substantially. Outside Oxford, and on the city's trunk and classified roads such as Botley Road, Cowley Road, Marston Ferry Road and the Ring Road, the County Council has a contract with a private company to repair public roads and paths, including repairing potholes. ODS is not involved in this work. Although ODS does have crews out spotting defects in Oxford's minor roads, all our citizens can help us by reporting issues to Fix My Street. This information makes everyone aware of where the potholes are and helps plan the repairs. And ODS will always do its best to respond as quickly as it can and to high quality within the financial constraints it faces. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask a very quick follow-up?
I don't think
Very
so,
speedy.
sorry. You will
Okay.
have to-
Can
do-
I
do email him?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks. Right. We then have a second public address from Dr. Vera Amelli. Welcome, Dr. Amelli. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Vera Amelli. I am a researcher and lecturer at the University of Oxford, where I also completed my DPhil. I have been a resident of Oxford for almost a decade now. As a social scientist, I study health systems and how societies build and sustain structures that maintain life. So I want to speak from experience as an Iranian woman born and raised in Iran, as a resident of Oxford, and as a social scientist studying health systems. The US-Israeli illegal aggression against Iran and Iranians for a second time during negotiations and just before an agreement was within reach, as announced by the Omani foreign minister and mediator, cannot be understood only as a conflict between states or even people. It is an illegal act of aggression that targets Iran and Iranians in 3 layers: through the destruction of life, the destruction of memory, and the narrowing of our futures. First, it is the destruction of life. We see that medical centers have been targeted and damaged, that schools have been struck directly, that hundreds of innocent schoolgirls and boys were among the very first victims of this war. Civilians, women, and children are being killed by the US and Israeli missiles and bombs every day across the region and now in Iran. We then hear numbers, but any one number is already too large. Numbers can obscure as much as they reveal, because what is being lost is not only what is visible in the moment of impact, it is the system that maintains life and makes survival possible. When health workers are killed, when hospitals are struck, the violence does not end there. It continues quietly in the patient who cannot be treated, in the delayed surgery, in the chronic condition that becomes fatal only because existing treatment is no longer accessible. A health system is not only infrastructure, it is the thin line that stands between illness and death. Second, it is the destruction of memory. We now know that museums and historical sites across Iran have been targeted and damaged, including sites marked by UNESCO as World Heritage Sites, places where history has not been preserved in isolation, but layered across centuries, belonging not just to Iranians, but to humanity. By last week, more than 56 museums and historical buildings across the country were damaged. In Tehran alone, 19 sites were damaged, including the beautiful Golestan Palace and the Hall of Mirrors. In historic cities such as Isfahan, Shiraz, and Semnan, cultural heritage was severely damaged. These are the heritage from the Achaemenid and Sasanian worlds through the Safavid and Qajar periods. These are not simply magnificent structures, they are the record of continuity of a civilization that has endured far more than 2,500 years. And that endurance has not been built on expansion. It has been built on preservation, on the ability of a people to remain alive in their language, in their memory, in their resistance, and in their understanding of themselves. So when these sites are targeted, what is struck is not only stone, it is the continuity, it is the link between past and present, it is our national heritage, but also world heritage. And here in Oxford, this cannot be unfamiliar. This is a city that has made a life out of preservation. It understands that history is not decoration, it is what allows a society to recognize itself across time. So when heritage is damaged elsewhere, Oxford is not untouched by it. It is implicated in the question of what we choose to value and what we are willing to let disappear. Third, it is the destruction of the future. Because what is being dismantled now is not only what exists, but what could exist. Hospitals, schools, bridges, roads, systems built over decades by a nation under constraint, under pressure, under sanctions, and economic strangulation. To destroy them is not only to wound the present, it is to reach forward and make the future smaller. It is to leave fewer possibilities, weaker systems, and a longer shadow of harm. And so the question returns inevitably to us. Oxford calls itself and is a city of sanctuary, but sanctuary is not a word that can survive contradiction. It cannot mean welcome in principle and restriction in practice. It cannot mean openness when it is easy and withdrawal when it is difficult, because it is precisely at moments like this, when the conditions of life are being dismantled elsewhere, that the meaning of sanctuary is decided. And there is something else that must be said without evasion. The country that is now under attack, Iran, is also one that has for decades hosted one of the largest refugee populations in the world. More than 3.5 million people have sought refuge and live in Iran. So we are faced with a reversal that should give us a pause. A place that has offered refuge is itself made unsafe. This is not a complicated question. It is a question of whether we are willing to recognize what is being destroyed, not pretending for a second that any of this can bring any good for anyone, not for Iranians, not for Americans, and not for the Jewish people. And whether we are willing to speak in a way that is equal to that reality. Because if a city like Oxford, a city that claims to stand for knowledge, for history, and for human dignity, cannot speak clearly at a moment like this, then it becomes difficult to know what those claims mean. I urge you to support this motion and speak against the destruction of life, memory, and future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amelli. I think our Councillor Brown, the leader of the council, has a response for you.
Thank you.
Yes. Firstly, thank you so much for your incredibly moving words, and I think all of us here are incredibly grateful to you for giving up your time and coming to speak to us today. Our hearts from all of us go out to you, your family, and all other Iranians facing the current aggression, as well as to the many people across the region who are finding themselves drawn into this escalating war. I'm very relieved that our government are not engaged in the aggression and are resisting calls to do so, only participating in defensive actions. But I would like to express on behalf of the City Council our absolute sympathies with the plight of the people of Iran, who are victims both of the repressive Iranian regime and now also of the unjustified war led by President Trump and the Israeli government. I should, however, warn you that unfortunately it is unlikely that we will get to this motion tonight, but please understand that our feelings on this issue are still very strong and we absolutely support what you're saying.
Thank you for your solidarity.
Thank you. Right, so we now move on to item 14, which is a slightly unusual one. We've around the petition to save our museum. So I'm going to invite Avril Alexander to come and make her address first. After that, Councillor Brown, I think, is going to respond with a report, and then we will be debating the recommendations in that report. So if Avril is ready. Welcome, Avril. Welcome, and thank you. You've got up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
We represent nearly 2,000 Oxford residents who were horrified to discover that the council had decided to introduce entrance fees to the Museum of Oxford. I started this petition and have been amazed to see how it has grown organically as word has spread. On the final day before charging started, people flocked to the museum to leave messages against charging. You can read them on the Save Our Museum website. Today, we want to set out three main areas of concern. Number one, introducing charges is the wrong decision for the museum and threatens its long-term viability. The museum will not be able to compete with the much larger and higher profile university museums, which are all free. We will likely see a serious drop in footfall, which means the funding gap will not be filled. This is the conclusion the Council's own commissioned research came to, but it seems to have been ignored. Meanwhile, this has created barriers to entry for the local people of Oxford. All of us should have the right to access our own history. Furthermore, requiring people on benefits and seeking asylum to prove their status in such a public place to gain free entry is undignified, embarrassing, and potentially dangerous in the current climate. Number two, the decision was taken in an undemocratic and untransparent way. The introduction of charging was decided by Cabinet, not the full Council. There was no consultations among museum users or museum staff. But funding was applied for from the Arts Council on the basis that charging was going to be introduced, even before Cabinet discussed and agreed it. This means the decision was actually made behind closed doors by senior councillors and officers with no transparency and accountability at all. Number three, councillors have been undermining the museum to make their case in the press, using inaccurate and inconsistent figures. Councillor Hollingsworth said to the BBC, the museum's visitor numbers have significantly dropped. Actually, they have been rising steadily since the museum reopened, and no doubt would have continued to rise. He is comparing them to pre-redevelopment visitor figures that, according to the council itself, were counted in a different way and are not comparable. Councillor Hollingsworth also claimed that the museum received around £5,000 in voluntary donations from visitors last year, but actually it was nearly £12,500. Councillor Hollingsworth claims the funding gap is £77,000, and Councillor Brown claims it is nearly £100,000. Our Freedom of Information request showed a gap of closer to £50,000 that didn't take into account nearly half the museum's income. Why are different councillors using different numbers? Which is correct? The council argued in the Oxford Mail a month ago that if the funding gap cannot be filled, the museum may have to close, as it's taking funding away from other community groups. This is cynical and divisive when the museum itself is an amazing community resource, partnering with groups across the city on educational and outreach activities. Trying to pit community-focused organisations against each other like this is outrageous. We want a council that will champion and support local history and community groups, not try to turn them against each other. In conclusion, we would like to see the entry fees dropped immediately. Ultimately, councillors need to recognise that the Museum of Oxford is a wonderful community resource that they should be proud of. Instead of this negativity and divisiveness, we want to see a council prepared to work in partnership with the talented and hard-working museum staff and the Museum Development Trust to find alternative ways to secure its future. If you don't know the museum well, please take 10 minutes out of your day to go and wander around. Read the stories that you will not find anywhere else in Oxford about events that have shaped our city, like the Cutteslowe Walls and the Florence Park rent strike. Ancient artefacts such as our patron St. Friedewald's gravestone, a celebration of our industrial past such as the Cowley plant, and even a tin of Cooper's Oxford marmalade that went all the way to the Antarctic with Scott. The Museum of Oxford was never designed to have an entrance fee. It was designed to be a free resource for the people of Oxford. Please keep it that way. Thank you.
very much, Ms Alexander. So I now call on Councillor Brown to respond to this.
Thank you very much, Avril, for addressing Council today and for the significant commitment shown by the nearly 2,000 residents who signed the petition. I want to begin by recognising the depth of feeling expressed. The Museum of Oxford is a cherished institution, and your passion for protecting its accessibility speaks to the strong sense of community engagement that has always defined it. I want to assure you that that is shared by those of us on this council. I also understand the concerns raised about fairness, transparency and the museum's long-term sustainability. These concerns are sincerely felt, and I appreciate the opportunity to respond clearly and respectfully. The decision to introduce a small entry charge was not taken lightly. The petition report presented to Council outlines the financial reality facing the museum. In 24 to 25, even after the Council's planned contribution of £141,867, the museum recorded an unbudgeted revenue pressure of £77,060.54, reflecting the gap between controllable income and expenditure, which is Table 3 in the report. Rising costs and the continued shortfall in footfall compared to the optimistic projections made during the redevelopment have placed the museum in a challenging financial position, unfortunately. It is precisely because we value the museum that we have had to consider how to protect its future. The charging model approved by Cabinet in October 2025 was designed with accessibility at its core. The model provides free annual passes for residents in receipt of benefits, people with no recourse to public funds, disabled visitors, foster carers and under fives. It also provides free entry to all Oxfordshire school groups, carers, attendees of pre-booked activities, volunteers and object owners, and at least 12 free entry days per year for everyone to ensure that no one is excluded from engaging with their city's history. I do understand concerns about dignity and the process of verifying eligibility. That is why the model mirrors the approach already used for our leisure services, ensuring a consistent and respectful process, and is also why museum staff have been trained to support visitors sensitively and appropriately. Anyone wishing to visit for free without verifying eligibility can do so once a month. Questions have also been raised today about transparency. The report on the petition makes clear that the decision followed a formal cabinet process, supported by detailed financial analysis and in accordance with the Council's constitutional requirements. I recognise, however, that some residents feel they should have been more directly involved earlier in those discussions. Unfortunately, the timescale for applying for the funding required to make the change did not allow for that, but we will continue to monitor feedback and the impact of the change. On the issue of visitor numbers and financial figures, I recognise that there has been frustration about data being presented in different ways. I share that frustration because it's been presented in different ways to us at different times too. Some of this reflects the difference between the budgets managed day-to-day by staff teams and the end-of-year figures, which apportion central overheads to those cost centres. Some of this also reflects historic counting methods where visitors could be counted more than once before the introduction of charging. The new ticketing system now provides for the first time accurate, unduplicated data so that future reporting is consistent, transparent and, importantly, verifiable. Finally, I want to be clear. The museum's future matters deeply to this council. The decision to introduce charging was taken to protect the museum, not to undermine it. The Museum Renewal Fund grant has enabled additional marketing, new philanthropy plans, and combined tickets with other partners, which are all part of a wider strategy to ensure the museum reaches residents across the city, improves its financial resilience, and enables the stories of Oxford's communities to continue to be shared for generations to come. I want to thank everyone who has taken the time to raise their concerns. Even where we may differ on the best solution, we share the same goal: a thriving, welcoming Museum of Oxford that is sustainable, accessible, and rooted in the communities that it serves. I give my commitment that we will continue to monitor the impact of charging as we collect financial data and customer feedback over the next months. In the meantime, I hope that all those who care about the museum will help to spread the word about it and encourage people to visit and continue to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for this? Oh, no. That was the response. Okay.
So, does Susan now propose the report? Yes, so Susan.
Okay, sorry. So that was the reply to that. Would you like to now propose the report?
Yes,
Thank you.
bearing in mind that I have just given quite a detailed statement in response to the petitioner, I am not intending to make a lengthy speech, also bearing in mind the fact that we have only got 15 minutes for this debate of the petition. So in order to allow as many people as possible to be able to speak during the debate, I will curtail my remarks. But in moving the report, I wish to slightly amend recommendation 4 and change it, so delete the words "the action it wishes to take, if any," and instead insert "to recommend to Cabinet that further opportunities to provide free access to the museum and local people be explored." So I am happy to leave it there, and we'll obviously have hopefully have an opportunity to summarise at the end, but at this moment I'm going to pass over to, I think, Councillor Smoten to second.
Thank you. Over to Councillor Smoten.
Yes, I'll second that.
Excellent. All right, then we are into sort of debating time. Who would like to speak on this issue? Councillor Muddiman. Councillor Muddiman, off you go.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I love the Museum of Oxford. In fact, I'm just in the process of donating it a new exhibit, which is the sign that was on the Botley Road Bridge, saying that the height sign that obviously is relevant because buses couldn't go under it, which I managed to secure when the bridge was demolished. So hopefully that's going to be there. And I very much hope that residents of Botley Road in my ward and across Oxford will be able to continue to go in there and see that exhibit and other exhibits for free. Free entry to national museums was introduced by New Labour in 2001. And the policy of free admission has always been part of the national education system, making culture and information accessible to all. The current cost of living crisis makes paid cultural outings out of reach for many Oxford residents, and there are not enough free activities for families in the centre of Oxford, and our local residents can't afford to lose this one. And just to go to the point of there being set days when residents are allowed to go, the walk-in principle is really, really important. The idea that you can walk in at the drop of a hat whenever it suits you really matters. Certainly my own experience as a member of a large family meant that we never went to paid museums or galleries because they were too expensive, because even a small charge when you're a big family means it becomes out of reach. And I spent many boring hours looking around dusty old churches in the south of Ireland, which I wouldn't wish on anyone. And my final point is that just recently, in December 25, the Hodge Review of the Arts Council England recommended charging only international tourists for museums and keeping it free for all UK residents, and very much suggested that it would be a really good idea to introduce a tourist tax to help us pay for some of our cultural attractions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smoten.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So, at Budget Council last month, we debated the Lib Dem group amendment, and one of the things that would have done would have been to fund free access to the museum for Oxford residents throughout the school summer holidays. I hope we can all agree that would be a very desirable thing to do if we can afford it, and the cost to do that was a mere £5,000 a year, which is absolute peanuts for an authority of this scale. The Labour group voted that amendment down unanimously last month. They also had the option to amend their own budget to include a similar line, but chose not to. Indeed, we had an amendment published, which was not ultimately moved in the agenda, which would have done that amongst other things. However, when it became clear that the mathematics of who was off sick that day meant that it was possible to squeeze through without an amendment, then it was junked. So I'm very glad that we're here now asking for more free access for local people, but I think it's rather a case of better late than never. In my view, free access for local residents strikes the right compromise between a free cultural asset for residents and helping to improve the budget position. It's difficult to make concrete promises right now because, of course, in 6 weeks' time, this whole authority, half this authority, will be up for election. However, in event that the voters of Headington are good enough to have me back as their councillor, and in event that the Liberal Democrats have a role to play in the next authority, then I'll be very glad to support providing more free access to the museum for local people.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Malik.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Listening to the petitioner and answering to the petition, Councillor Brown, her answer raises seriously question, actually, when she says the figures given to her or the council, she shared the frustration. But in my book, I will call incompetence. I mean, how could someone can provide wrong figure and we as a councillor have a duty? This is our basic duty as a councillor, scrutinize the report and ask the questions. And how did those figures do not tally what the petitioner said in their address? And could she, my question is, if the figure was provided wrong, what action were taken about the person, the officers who provide the wrong figures, and would she, Councillor Brown, apologize providing the wrong figure to the petitioner in this address? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Councillor Turner.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I mean, so my point of view, I really love the museum. I think it's a brilliant space. I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it does a lot to redress the balance. I would much rather it was freed and charged for. At the same time, as a council, we have to cut our cloth. We make a range of really brilliant investments in a range of kind of arts and historical and cultural organisations, and the option would be there to refocus them. I'll be honest as well, Councillor Smoten mentioned his budget amendment. I thought this was one of the better bits of the amendment. One of the effects of the amendment would have been to reduce funding in later years for sports development, which is also very important. So councillors took their view. I was intrigued by Councillor Muddiman's remarks because I looked over the Green Budget amendment and I can see here notice board, feasibility work, improvements to parks, funding for pocket parks, and then there was there was a saving on some additional income around not getting rid of garden waste, additional funding for community grants, transfer to capital, but I can't see anything about the museum. And I also looked in my papers for the Real Independent Group, I think that's the right name, the group budget amendment, but no such amendment was tabled. There was no amendment. So the thing is, if people wanted to make more money available for this, what they needed to do was turn up at Budget Council with an amendment and then say, this is what we're going to spend the money on, which, to be fair, is what Councillor Smoten did. But there's no good, really, sitting out that debate, not saying anything, and then popping up saying we're on your side, because the moment passed for last year, and my tip to people, if they want to change this, is to put in a budget amendment in a timely way next year. I personally will be quite sympathetic to it. There you go.
Point of clarification, Lord Mayor, please. The Real Independent did not give no amendments to the budget.
Thank you.
Thank
for the
you.
clarification. Okay. Now we're moving on to Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I was Cabinet Member for Culture for 2023 to 2024, and I had a number of conversations about this issue. In agreement with Councillor Muddiman, feel that the walk-in principle is critical to the success of museums, from the V&A in London to the Leicester City Museum, which is recommended, by the way, for its collection of Picasso ceramics donated by Richard Attenborough and is free to visit. My suggestion then, as now, is that the way to ensure the museum's future is to do two things. Firstly, to create and signpost Oxford's cultural quarter by introducing clear signage. No one knows that there is a museum in the town hall. It is invisible to tourists. When you drive into Leicester, in comparison, you are greeted by signs reading Culture Quarter. Secondly, separate the permanent, the free exhibition from paid-for exhibitions, and make the paid-for exhibitions particularly exciting, or exciting enough that people want to pay to see them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Raymond, waving to me from the back.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just want to clarify to Councillor Hunt, you can't drive into Oxford if you closed all the roads off.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Yes, I'd just like to remind people about two of the paintings that are held in one of the other rooms that we've discussed before. Salome with the head of John the Baptist, and also the rape of the Sabines, and that these potentially are worth quite a lot of money. Residents have consistently spoken out about how they're not aligned to our values as a council, and if they were sold, the proceeds of which could be used to preserve other aspects of history that are maybe more aligned to our values. So that's something to consider for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
So the proposal that Councillor Miles is putting forward is selling off some very limited things that we have to fund perhaps an extra year of free services to the museum, and then what? It's like this keeps happening. The proposals keep being put forward to sell off the increasingly limited number of sort of like historical things that we have as a council to fund services. It's like what the Tories do. That's the thing that we don't like the Tories doing. We don't like when the Tories sell things off to pay for services because they will run out of things to sell off. So I would like if the opposition groups stop proposing selling things off to fund things for a limited amount of time. It's electioneering. It's Tory policy.
I think, was that Councillor Yateman? Not really, no. I'll just check with the monitoring officer.
Can I make a point of personal
Mentioned
explanation?
you personally.
Then?
Did you mention?
He mentioned Councillor Miles. He did. Definitely.
Yes, he did.
Point of personal clarification.
Yes, to clarify, I have consistently said around selling off some of these assets that they can be reinvested in other forms of other assets which can generate an income which can support, which might have better returns, that can support service delivery. So it's about if you have a painting, you don't get an income from a painting when it's just sitting on that wall.
You've made your point there.
But
Thanks.
in shares, for instance, you might do.
Now move on. Councillor Yateman, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think looking at the report, some of the concerns around charging is that reduction in attendance, and then that just limits some of the options that you have in exploring other avenues, things that paid activities, etc. You're reducing the amount of funding that would come through those channels. So it's not really clear to me how much investment and time has been spent really considering some of those options before heading towards charging.
Thank you. I think we do now need to go to a sum up from Susan and then from Councillor Brown, and then we put the recommendations to the vote.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So Councillor Muddiman referenced being free entry being very important, and it is, which is why we have ensured that there is still free entry, particularly for local residents. But I absolutely note the points that Councillor Smoten referenced around Budget Council, but also the points that Councillor Turner noted about Budget Council, which is that literally no group in this council chamber actually proposed at Budget Council that there should be completely free access restored to the museum. So no one was proposing anything other, and I completely appreciate that Councillor Smoten's group did put some limited additional free access in as part of their budget amendments, which were not carried. Councillor Malik talks about the figures. The petition report sets out what happened. I can assure him that the figures that were approved by members, the figures that went into the Cabinet report and the figures that went into the report that goes to Council were indeed looked at very closely and were correct. Unfortunately, some of the figures that went out in an FOI were not, and I believe that has been or is being corrected, and that is one of the reasons why there are two sets of figures out there, which is really not helpful. Councillor Jemima Hunt references signage, and I completely agree with her. I think it's a really important thing that we do need to do, and we have, I think a number of us identified that as something that needs to be improved. Part of the proposals that are in front of us, or that were in front of Cabinet when this decision was made, was to do things like joint ticketing as part of this whole process. And that will help drive footfall, we hope, into the museum. But I also think that there is
got about
actually
60 seconds left
a role for everyone in this chamber to encourage people to come to the museum, either under the free access that is available to local residents and to school children, or indeed as paying customers. So thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I will stop there.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Okay, in that case, we are ready to put the recommendations to the vote. Is everyone happy and clear what the recommendations are? Yeah, put your hand up if you're not. Can we have a very quick clarification for Councillor Hunt about what, so the recommendations are as listed in the petition plus the amendment that Susan will just repeat?
Sorry, the change is to recommendation 4, which deletes the words "the action it wishes to take, if any," and replaces them with "to recommend to Cabinet that further opportunities to provide free access to the museum and to local people be explored."
Right, thank you very much. In that case, can I see all those in favour of these recommendations? To count? No. Thank you. All those against? Thank you. And any abstentions? Right. Thank you. That is clearly passed. Good. So it will be reconsidered at a forthcoming Cabinet. Excellent. Right. We're now moving on to the motions then. So we have an hour from now. Bear that in mind if we want to get through to the second, third or fourth motions. But the first one, better use of Oxpen's Bridge funding, is going to be proposed by Councillor Miles.
Thank you. And before I start, I'd just like to say we'd like to accept part of the Green amendments, the first section of the motion. So those are the last 2 bullet points under Council notes, and but not the first bullet point under Council therefore resolves. Yeah. Okay. So just to say, this motion's focusing on securing a better use for Oxpen's Bridge funding. Now, as a councillor, we have to listen to residents and act on what we hear, their infrastructure needs and wishes. In 2021, I was first elected for Summertown Ward and was listening to residents about the need for better cycling and pedestrian infrastructure on the Woodstock Road. I learned that plans to improve the pavement and cycle lane on the Woodstock Road were in hand. Growth Deal funding had supported detailed plans for improving this corridor from Oxford North to the city centre. This would improve the safety of those commuting from and to the new development, enhance safety for existing residents travelling along this main travel corridor. In late 2021, the plans had gone through a co-creation process and were going through the final consultation phase. They went on to receive broad support from residents, campaign groups, and also me as the local councillor. The stars were aligned. 12 million of funding was allocated to build this improved and much needed infrastructure, responding to the priorities of residents. And it would alleviate the impact of the development of Oxford North and connecting residents and employees based in this new site to the city. This money was in part from the Homes from Infrastructure programme, which was designed to deliver strategic infrastructure to support the acceleration of already planned houses in Oxfordshire. Now, in 2022, as I chaired the FOP Future Oxfordshire Partnership Scrutiny Committee, we tracked the Growth Deal funding. Inflationary pressures post-COVID met districts reprioritising what would get funded from this pot, which, while administered by the county, some of the decision-making lay with the FOP, the Future Oxford Partnership. And in 2022, as each district council put forward their own priorities for how the Growth Deal funding was used in their district, the city favoured the Oxpen's Bridge over the Woodstock Road corridor improvements. The FOP Scrutiny Committee at this time called for the funding to be used for the creation of new rather than duplication of infrastructure, something that the Oxford Bridge would be doing, the improvement of existing infrastructure, and the greater prioritisation to be given to creating infrastructure where linked development had already been completed or was in progress. But the Labour leadership didn't listen to FOP scrutiny or to residents. Even today, Labour councillors are saying they want safer cycling infrastructure on the Woodstock Road, but it's because of them we don't have the fully segregated cycle route that would have been built by now if it wasn't for that decision that the City Council put forward. It's now 2026 when the money should have been spent, the infrastructure should have been built, and there could have been that improved infrastructure.
30 seconds left.
Labour ignored residents. They didn't listen to residents of Barton either. Growth deal funding and City Council funding could have been used for something else, for like a bridge over the ring road from Barton, but the Labour administration didn't listen. They say one thing and do another. So it's cost us an opportunity for funding the Woodstock Road corridor improvements that residents wanted and needed. So today I urge you with this motion to ask the leader to write to the relevant minister and request that growth deal fundings are varied to permit the funds are used for more urgent purposes in the city, such as the Woodstock Road corridor improvements or the much needed bridge in Barton. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I call on Councillor Smoten to second the motion, unless you'd like to reserve.
I will formally second and speak at the end, please, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. In that case, I just want to ask Councillor Muddiman, are you withdrawing your amendment? You're happy with the additions that have been made to the...
Yes, I'm withdrawing the amendment and I have agreed with the Lib Dems that they will accept part of it. So yes, happy with that.
Great. Okay. Thank you. In that case, we can move on to debate the amended, self-amended, effectively, motion. So, who would like to speak on this? Councillor Muddiman.
Thank you. I support this motion. Obviously, as a Green councillor, I completely, I'm hugely in favour of supporting cycling infrastructure across the city, but only if it's for Oxford residents and in the right place. And this doesn't fulfil that criteria. I don't believe this bridge is for Oxford residents. And I think if the city was actually putting the needs of Oxford residents first, over and above the needs of the university, then this bridge would be going in Barton over the A40 to help all the people in all of the new housing there get across the A40 safely. Or the money could be spent on a bridge going over the Thames between Folly Bridge and Donington Bridge, enabling thousands upon thousands of Oxford cyclists in the east avoid the dangerous plain roundabout. There are so many better, well, those are just two, but there are many places where this money could be better spent if the council was putting the needs of Oxford residents first. But sadly, my understanding is actually it's the needs of the university that are coming first for the Oxford Bridge. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ross Smith.
Is that working? Is that working? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I concur with the last speaker. But just to emphasise the need for pedestrian and cycle access across the A40 between Barton and the Headington Northway area, it's much needed. We need a safe crossing. We've had several accidents, as we know, and very near misses on that A40 crossing. The money would be much better spent on actually providing something that local residents need and want. That's not the only crossing on the A40 as well. I'd remind council as well that we were told about 10 years ago, I believe, that we were going to have a new crossing on the A40 between Barton, the Leisure Centre, and indeed Risinghurst. That hasn't appeared. And again, that is something that the council perhaps ought to be spent, or the growth money ought to be being spent on, rather than this bridge that doesn't actually give any new hasn't got any new housing, and actually does, as Councillor Muddiman thinks, it's more of a wish list for the Oxford University research. So I shall be supporting the motion, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Malik.
Thank you. This motion will make a great newsletter for the election time. I mean, we had certain debate before. I mean, they want to improve cycling. Of course we do. I mean, to be honest, my experience with the Liberal Democrats and the Green is not very good enough. I mean, I written to the man in charge of the highways and the cycling champion to come and meet me with the Cyclox and the Living Street people. That's how we can improve cycling in Cowley. I mean, the highway guys, due respect to him, he cancelled a couple of days before, and even the cycling champion, when the date was, not even replied. So it's such a nice to hear they care about safe cycling and they want all this, but in practically they don't want to work with you, you know, where is required. That's one thing. Secondly, I mean, you're asking city council leader to write a letter to the minister to give you that money. Oh, that'll be great. But you guys, Liberal Democrats, are fully in charge of the county council, who's in charge of the highways. They've got millions and millions of pound budget instead of what we have here, right? So I do not understand this motion. And when you talk about the bridge, I agree. I'm not in favor of bridge. I mean, this is a town and gown business, and the gown wins and town always loses. That's how the university works. But unfortunately, that's the reality. That's my opinion. But equally, I think they should go ask the county council. This is the 5th year they are running now, the county council Liberal Democrats, and they should have done so and find the money to improve the cycling in North Oxford. This is another sweetener in their newsletter. Oh, we have asked that, and dare Labour not write a letter to the minister for the money of this North Oxford cycling corridor. Oxford is a dangerous cycling city, not a safe cycling city, because of the county council do not invest in the infrastructure.
Can we keep to the City Council if we can? Councillor Railton.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. As probably the only person in this room who's thrown a party for a bridge, maybe the only person in this city, I thank the Lib Dems for the opportunity to talk about a bridge. I spent a few years of my life now defending this bridge, and will continue to do so. It will be a useful link beyond connecting Oxpens and Osneymead, and me and many others will welcome it, using it to avoid Folly Bridge to get to the station, for example. It is not a bridge for the university. It is infrastructure going in ahead of development, something we are very bad at doing in this country. I would happily fill this 3 minutes talking about this bridge, but I will spare you that honour. Instead, I think it's worth looking at the other half of this motion. The list of alternatives is pretty revealing in that it includes yet another very spendy North Oxford transport scheme, when lots of very nice paving and planting went into Woodstock Road just before the county election last year. Don't think lots of us didn't notice that we don't seem to get that level of placemaking over in East Oxford. You know, yeah, we noticed. A bit of a gall then to propose another one, defunding a bridge which would benefit thousands of existing and future residents in West, South and East Oxford in favour of North Oxford residents. The 2021 scheme was not funded by the growth deal because it wasn't deemed deliverable for the for the £12.5 million at the time. The funding was parcelled up among remaining growth deal road schemes outside the city, because of course it was. The bus companies hated this scheme. Not even all of the county cabinet liked it, and it would have lost some of the very, very mature lime trees that line and define the road. Very easy. Sorry? And cherry trees, sorry. Very easy for this scheme to end up in a Sheffield or Plymouth type situation, actually. Diverting this money, which isn't possible at this point, and the money that's left wouldn't even touch the sides, is a non-starter. You know this is not a nice, fungible pot of money for your pet schemes. I know you know that this is the case. So in short, this is some pretty bad faith stuff from you. I will be voting against the motion.
Councillor Raymond, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't think I often get Councillor Railton and Councillor Malik agreeing on stuff. But here we go. Apart from Sad saying it's all about elections, this bridge, as Councillor Myers pointed out, has been on the agenda for 5 years. Now that it's all signed, sealed, they bring the motion. Why is that? Is it just for the paperwork, just for election fodder, which it feels like the bridge is gone, it's going to be there, it's coming. Why don't we spend our time on something that's more credible and more worth talking about, apart from how Woodstock Road and Summertown and all the places up there can have some more money and look nice. And, you know, the Greens, I worry about the Greens, you know, they used to have their principles, right? But now they've just become a populist party. They just join on wherever it goes. I mean, I wonder who you represent now. Do you represent the working class, the climate change, the end? I don't know. Please tell me. It'll be enlightening. Thank you. I'll be voting against this because the horse is gone. It's bolted.
Thank you, Councillor Latif.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I do happen to agree with some bits of the motion, particularly bullet points 4 and 5 in the council notes, which is doubt remains that the Oxfordshire Bridge will be able to provide a dry route towards the island and thereby unlock housing due to the low-lying railway underpass in between. And also point 5, which is the Growth Board, was strongly urged against pursuing the Oxfordshire Bridge project to begin with. It is worth noting, I think I agree with colleagues who have said that much of this motion is about electioneering, unfortunately, and it is worth mentioning that this bridge was the subject of a planning review committee, one of the few planning review committees decisions over the last few years, and it was only with the support of the Liberal Democrat Party and councillors that were present that actually the bridge got funding and got approval. So I think it's really important that when we look at a motion like this, it's not just about electioneering. We need to stick to our principles. Much of what's being said about the bridge now was true then. There's a few bits that have changed, but much of it is much the same. And I voted against supporting the proposal to support the bridge when I was at Planning Review Committee, having considered all the matters that were put ahead. And I'm aware that other members of this council also did. However, as I said, that it was only passed with the support of Liberal Democrat councillors, including some who are sitting here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And before one of the councillors on my left points it out, planning decisions are, of course, not whipped party politically. So that's you see, I do occasionally defend Liberal Democrat councillors when I believe it to be I believe it to be just to do so. However, since my own ward has been mentioned extensively, I cast my mind back nearly 15 years to the planning process for the new Barton estate, when we were initially keen to see a bridge across from the new development to Old Haddington Village. It proved that not only would it be very difficult to find the money for it, it would also be very difficult to find the room because of the different levels of the two sides of the ring road. To put in a bridge which was compliant and safe for people using wheelchairs, mobility scooters, pushchairs, and on bikes. Councillors may be aware that there is a planning proposal in the hands of South Oxfordshire which would put a bridge across the ring road where the two sides are level just east of Barton Park that would be accessible to Barton Park residents. That application is not universally popular, but it is at least possible within the budgets that have been proposed for that development. And in the event that the development goes ahead, we have made it very clear that from our point of view it absolutely must include the bridge, because that's the only benefit that it could bring to residents of Barton Park. I don't wish to let the County Council entirely off the hook, though Councillor Malik has given them a good tongue lashing already. It is their responsibility to make the existing pedestrian crossing from Barton Park to Northway safe, and this has not been done so. This has not happened. Had the motion included a proposal to provide funding for speed cameras and to a proposal that we should support a reduced speed limit on that section of the ring road, I would be much more inclined to be supportive. But as it is, I don't think this would bring the benefit to my ward, which the proposers perhaps think.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a great shame that Councillor Hollingsworth can't be here because he does enjoy a good debate on this particular bridge. But he's currently chaperoning 51 students on a very, very delayed train to Germany. So he's having fun all the same. I just wanted to reiterate a couple of points which I'm sure he would make were he here, which is that this has been in our plans as a city council and a county council for well over 20 years. And this is now the historic opportunity to actually deliver something that has long been wanted, which is a better pedestrian and cycle route to connect to really important parts of the city. So I think it is really quite extraordinary that people have opposed it in the way that they have. Anyone would think, we were proposing a motorway going through Christchurch Meadow or something like that. It is not the case. This is a pedestrian and cyclist bridge, and it will connect up different areas. It's a good thing. With capital letters. I note the point in the motion which says that the Growth Board was strongly urged against pursuing this. Well, the Growth Board was also urged against any kind of proposals for housing. I'm glad to say we ignored those urgings as well. And I think it is really important to recognise that housing and infrastructure are needed in this city and more widely because we have got a growing economy, we have a growing city, and we need housing and we need infrastructure, and we need the means for people to get around in our city, as we have talked about on a number of occasions this evening, not just by car, but also on foot and by bike. So I very much welcome the bridge, and I most certainly will not be voting for this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
I think electioneering is a good way to describe the proposal put forward. I mean, it's got a long list of different things we could do instead of the bridge, instead of the Oxfordshire Bridge, but realistically we could only do one of them. My ward's been mentioned quite a lot here. It's the bridge between Barton Park and Northway, and I can see it now. I can see a leaflet going through the doors. Councillor Taylor voted against bridge between Barton Park and Northway, but realistically, if we were going to scrap the Oxfordshire Bridge, that's probably not the one that's going to be picked. I mean, of course, it's been mentioned that the North Oxford, that all the nice North Oxford stuff has been is one of the things in there, and I very much fear that North Oxford would get all the funding. But also, it's not one or the other. I really hate how a lot of the councillors opposite will say, well, we can do this thing instead of this thing. While I would really love for the Oxfordshire Bridge to happen, and then I would really love for a bridge between Barton Park and Northway, and then I would really love for yet another bridge. I want 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't want to be making a single choice and that's the only choice that we make. I want it to be continuous. We will continue to develop Oxford, it will continue to grow, and we will continue to make this city better.
Thank you. Councillor Mundy.
Thank you very much. In relation to Councillor Railton's comments, I'm glad she's got the time to throw a party for a bridge that doesn't exist yet, but I just wonder whether she would have thought about throwing a party for a bridge that already does exist, which is the Gasworks Railway Bridge, which is a big hunk of steel and concrete, which is perfectly serviceable. It could have been adapted for this use at a far lower price. It could have improved links through the St. Ebs estate. You're all shaking your heads. That bridge exists. Anyway, so the point is that this was a piece of infrastructure that could have been used for this, for exactly the same kind of cause of increasing links across that river at that site. Indeed, for the development that's in question as well. I think it's a bit disingenuous to be having a go at the Lib Dems. Well, I'm not here to defend the Lib Dems, obviously, but it does reference to the motion does reference not just keep moving, jog on. There's reference to a link between the south and the east of the city with the Jackdaw Lane Bridge, and obviously a reference, as Councillor Taylor has said, to the bridge that he doesn't approve of, crossing the A40 at Barton Park. Sorry, that's a joke as well. So anyway, look, I think that once again, look, the Labour group here is all talk but no game when it comes to decarbonisation. When you dig up When you dig up the ground and you put steel in the ground, you're contributing to carbon emissions, and there's absolutely no question about it. If you really want to have the most sustainable way of improving transport links, you use the established infrastructure that's already in place and adapt it as the most efficient way you can. So anyway, I do support the motion, and I encourage other councillors to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to Councillor Smoten, who reserved his right earlier, and then we'll go to Councillor Miles to sum up. Oh, Councillor Fry first, sorry. We'll come
Thank
back to
you. Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is all rather surreal. I mean, I have actually on my screen in front of me the consultation in 2021-22, as mentioned already by Councillor Railton, for the Woodstock Road Improvement Scheme that would have used exactly the same sum of money, and that was not a Tory-controlled county council, and they withdrew that, and they gave the money back to the government. So one of the schemes that's promoted today was one that was out there, and then it was withdrawn. But coming to the actual Planning Review Committee meeting, which I happen to chair, I mean, just to put Councillor Latif right, the Lib Dems were not whipped. They voted in a different way. And the thing that swung that meeting was a very good speech by Councillor Smoten, who went through all the points on the planning grounds, and it was approved on good planning grounds, and I commend him for that speech.
Sorry, point of personal clarification. I didn't say that the Liberal Democrats were whipped. I said that the motion passed at the Planning Review Committee with the support of Liberal Democrat councillors, which is a point of fact. But I think Councillor Fry makes the point better than I did about what happened at that meeting.
Okay, we will now go to Councillor Smoten.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So I didn't. Do you want to heckle again? I couldn't hear you. No, well, that's a shame. Right then. A few mentions of sort of pulling funding, things like that. Members might note, and I think it's worth underscoring, that the line of the Green Amendment that we did not accept would have been one that called for pulling the funding at this juncture. So I'd like to briefly explain why. So the motion is about what to do in event that the proposed bridge hits the buffers. Bear in mind that this was written in December when the contractor had pulled out and a new contractor was being hastily sought. So that looked rather like a possibility at the time. And of course, in all infrastructure projects, it still is. If you want to make the infrastructure gods laugh, make plans, I think is the phrase I'm looking for. But there's a reason why this is all about what to do in event that the bridge cannot be delivered, rather than about abrupt cancellation at this stage. Firstly, I think we all ought to agree that if money were no object, then the proposed bridge would connect a missing link in the cycle network. The current route via the Gasworks rail bridge involves, on the town side, either walking your bike down the mill stream through squeeze stiles, which is no good at all, especially if you have a cargo bike or child seats or something of the sort, or you have to take a narrow shared route and then a blind turn into the Friars Wharf area, which is not at all ideal if there's a substantial volume of cyclists. That's why even rival plans that used the Gasworks Bridge still featured an improved path from its northern end across the Oxpens Meadow. While I appreciate that there is a view out there that the damage to the trees on the Grand Pont side is unacceptable in itself, to my mind, whilst regrettable, the size and scale of the damage is proportionate to the benefit to active travel. But money is an object, so what about it? If we were to cancel now, all that has already been spent on preparatory and design work, as well as likely some of the money for materials and construction, would be lost outright. How much depends on the particulars of the contracts, but half or more of the total budget seems likely at this juncture. It would be necessary then to commence a rival scheme at a much earlier stage. Therefore, we have to ask which is better, an improved cycle route from Osney to Oxpens Road, likely delivered in the near future for the residual cost, or only part funding of an alternative to be delivered likely several years later. At this juncture, I think the former is the responsible option. That's why we're talking today about what to do in event that the project can't be progressed, not about cancelling it right now. Just a couple of things to pick up also that have been raised in debate. This has been said a couple of times, but Councillor Latif kindly just said the Liberal
30
Democrats in
seconds to
general. Councillor Fry then dropped me right in it. But yes, I did vote in favour at the Planning Review Committee, and I voted in favour at the Planning Review Committee because I didn't believe that there were material planning considerations against it. That is the reason why everybody should be voting at the Planning Committee. And I think the suggestion that one would ever vote at the Planning Committee for a different reason is wrong. Councillor Taylor talks about that it would be good to do lots of things, which is quite right. But I think it's pretty noteworthy that the vast majority of things like this are being funded through alternate routes at the moment.
Seconds.
For that reason, money is scarce and it remains remains scarce.
Thank you. Okay, over to you, Councillor Miles.
Thank you. So thank you to Councillor Muddiman and Councillor Smith for your support for this. Councillor Malik spoke about the need for safer cycling in Cowley and pushed and said that the County Council was the one who was pushing the money away from this, which was not the case. To Councillor Railton, you talk about the streets, these slopes at the junctions which have been installed on the Woodstock and Banbury roads, but also in East Oxford, funded by central government, and the decision of which streets were going to have these side road entry treatments which make the entrances safer for people entering by bike in those junctions because it's slowing the traffic down. That was decided based on collision data and from central government allocated. So, you know, that isn't about the Lib Dems putting money in places where they want and improving infrastructure just in North Oxford. This was central government money decided by central government where it was going to be. In terms of the reference to mature lime trees being lost, if we'd have had the Woodstock Road corridor improvements, it never got that to the stage where those discussions were had with the landowners on the side, who I have spoken to in my capacity as a councillor, and who are willing to actually allow for extra space for a segregated cycle route. So we could have had that because the neighbouring landowners would have supported allocating that. Just in terms of Councillor Raymond, no, you know, when this motion was first tabled and we were going to discuss it, these contracts weren't signed actually. I think, was it only today in answer to Councillor Muddiman's question that we heard that today a contract was signed, only today. So actually, yes, the horse might have already kind of run, or whatever the expression is. I'm not as well educated as some of you in here, but just saying. But then, we had that opportunity, and obviously Labour administration didn't really want safer cycling through the city, part of the city. So in terms of the point that Councillor Rowley made around funding for speed cameras, that was not what this pot of money, central government pot of money for infrastructure spending was for. It wasn't for speed cameras, it was for building things like bridges. As for Councillor Brown, well, Councillor Hollingsworth, she referred to being in Germany, where I know that the engineering solutions there, they would have found a solution for the Barton Bridge, which apparently would have had technical difficulties building, but I'm sure they would have found that. And to Councillor Taylor wants it all, but we're not actually opposing the principle of a bridge. What we're calling for is around the prioritisation of what gets built now. The houses are already built in Oxford North, albeit fewer of them than we would have liked because you prioritised workspaces over houses, but it's already built. The houses aren't built yet, but on the other side of Oxford. So, why retrofit something, when at the expense, anyway. Just to say, please support this. We're one city and we need infrastructure is for everybody.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are now going to put this motion to the vote. Can I see all those in favour of this motion? Thank you. And all of those against? And any abstentions? So the motion has fallen. Thank you. Right, so bearing in mind, we're going to have to finish doing motions at 20:43. So we have got just over half an hour. No, just under half an hour to do that. So just bear that in mind as we move on to motion 18B, Prisoners for Palestine Hunger Strikes, which is going to be introduced by Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And by beginning, I just wanted to thank Councillors Attino and Kayam for their amendment to this motion, which the vast majority of which we have since incorporated into it in the amendment that you will have seen in the briefing note. The amendment also reflects a lot of things that have changed since this motion was first proposed at our January full council meeting. And there has been quite a lot of things that have changed in relation to this issue since then. Thankfully, the prisoners on hunger strike have ended their hunger strike, and they have done so without anyone having lost their lives, which is incredibly grateful for. Some elements of their demands have been met. And thirdly, the High Court has ruled that the government's ban and prescription of Palestine action was unlawful. But some things, sadly, have not changed. Many of the conditions that the hunger strikers endured remain the condition they find themselves in, and they remain the conditions that other prisoners on remand have faced. Prisoners are still being held on remand indefinitely and well beyond the CPS guidance of the maximum time possible that people should be held on remand, which is 182 days. People are currently being held on remand in these instances for it's projected well over a year. And of course, the government remains fully committed to the anti-democratic and draconian prescription of Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation, which is treating people who have legitimate and major concerns about the genocide in Gaza and this government's facilitation of it as terrorists and criminals. It also, the government and its prescription, treats civil liberties campaigners in the same vein as terrorists and as criminals. So this motion, sadly, remains extremely relevant and relevant for people in our city. Among those who have faced arrest simply for holding signs have been residents of this city, and indeed some of them have been former members of this council. Because I'm acutely aware that there is a mood within this council to seek to get through at least the third motion on the agenda, I won't speak for much longer, but just to say that this motion makes a number of specific requests of the government. Firstly, for them to meet with the families and representatives of the prisoners that were on hunger strike and address the concerns about the conditions they have faced. To ensure that all prisoners, both on remand and otherwise, have their human rights respected. To review much more regularly the list of prescribed organisations and whether they need to be prescribed. To deprescribe Palestine Action as it has been an undemocratic and now we found unlawful act, and to review whether expressing support for a prescribed organisation should be an arrestable offence. I'll save any other comments till the end of the debate, but I hope you all will vote for this motion.
Thank you. And then, Councillor Mundy, do you want to second it now or reserve your right to speak till the end?
I'll reserve my right to speak, please. Thanks, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Tino, are we... Sorry, has you had an amendment to this? You withdrawn. Okay. Great, thank you. So then, open up to debate. Thank you. Councillor Kane.
Thank you. I'm supporting this motion because it asks us to recognise something really basic, that holding people on remand for many months beyond the limits that are recommended, cutting them off from communication and failing to engage meaningfully with them while they risk their lives is deeply concerning. What's being requested isn't controversial. We need to seriously reflect on protests within the justice system. We need to protect health and life, and we need to ensure that human rights are upheld for everyone, including those on remand. We've all witnessed the genocide in Gaza, which is what the activists were initially protesting, and it's a pain that's felt across all of Oxford by all of our residents, and we all feel helpless as the genocide continues. By supporting this motion, we stand with our concerned residents, we stand for humane treatment, and we say that no one should have to starve themselves to be heard. Thank you.
Councillor Smoten.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll be very glad to support this motion with particular focus on the added points relating to prescription that were in what's now a joint amendment between the Green and Labour groups, because it was really unnecessary for us to have ever ended up in this situation. The prescription of Palestine action was recognised almost immediately by legal experts as a likely overreach by the government, and the experience since has thoroughly borne that out. Both the specific punishments of individuals and the treatment of the group as a whole have the appearance of example setting rather than proportionate response. It is in effect deterrence sentencing, which trades a supposed dissuasive effect for marked injustice against a specific individual or group. It brings to mind, for example, the American approach to drug laws, where there are instances of wildly disproportionate penalization of individual drug users in an attempt to dissuade other people. I don't think that sort of approach has any place in our country in any field of law. I can quite understand both the state wishing to stand by the principle that the original offences committed were in some cases quite serious, particularly the alleged GBH against a police officer, as well as the prison system's desire to avoid incentivising hunger striking. But we must nonetheless recognise that the initial government overreaction was the first domino in the chain that led us here. We must urgently review how prescription is used, and thereby ensure that in future the principle of proportionality is always held foremost in dealing with criminal matters. Thank you.
Councillor Jafari Marbini.
I would just like to go back to why Palestine Action was doing what it was doing, because it was trying to highlight British complicity in selling arms to a state that was and continues to not only commit genocide in Gaza and ethnically cleanse the West Bank, but it has now displaced millions of people from Lebanon, threatening that they shall never return, and has launched an illegal act on my country in Iran. The National, the Scottish newspaper, published a report, a leaked report that said the Home Secretary has consistently lied about Palestine Action in a panicked attempt to defend the prescription. The Home Secretary and this government, of which all of the members on that side are representatives of, has consistently given impunity to Israel, which is a genocidal state that is completely putting everyone's lives at risk, including people here, and is making everyone's lives worse. I have never had such an outpouring of public reaction against this war as I've had since the war started. Numerous members of the hospital of all faiths and none have come up to me to say, this is madness. And I just want to go back to what Susan Brown said in response to the speaker earlier. It is just blatantly untrue that Britain is acting defensively. In fact, Donald Trump showed a picture of the B-2 planes that are taking off from British bases that are dropping huge bombs on Iran. And the last time I looked at the map, Britain was in Europe, not in West Asia. So why is it that we have bases in West Asia, and why is it that we are choosing to allow our bases to be used in this way? And before you speak about the oppression of the Iranian people, my father was imprisoned by the Iranian government, but yet he is absolutely sure that extrajudicial killings and assassinations of leaders are not going to bring democracy to his people or his land that is being bombed. And in fact, the very first people that were killed were 110 school children that were killed in the usual manner of the US and Israelis, which is a double tap, which is when the children were asked to move the first bomb did not kill the children. They gathered up the children, the teachers bravely gathered up the children and put them into the school hall and into the prayer space and into where they're normally fed. And it was assessed again, and half an hour later, when their parents were on their way to collect them, another bomb was dropped on them and killed them. This is what Britain is supporting. This is what all members of that side, however they might want to express differently, are supporting because they're representatives of the Labour Party. And I'm sorry if that makes you feel bad, but that's just the reality of the situation.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Hosnia. Well, there's no doubt what happened in Palestine and the support the British government gave to the genocide has led to what emboldened Trump and the USA to do what they did in Iran. So the consequence of the support for the genocide in Gaza is now leading to more and more deaths across the Middle East. And this government is responsible for that. And the people on hunger strike, all we can say that they're heroes because they stood up and they defended the right the best way they could. I wish that we could do more with them. And all the government has been doing is just trying to cover its support for the genocidal government in Israel, which has been emboldened and now has taken over the whole of the Middle East, which is burning. And I think the chickens are going to come home to roost. And we're all responsible for that because we haven't spoken up. And the people that have spoken up, they've been in prison for up to a year or potentially up to a year. So I'm thankful that somewhere along the line that we can say something that gives them hope and gives what they did some kind of credence and feels that they're supported by the vast majority of people here, or the vast majority of the public, I would say, but not those in power. And that's the difference. And that is what's killing democracy all over the world. It's the people in power, nobody standing up to them. And it's all our responsibility. And you know, when you're in power, that's when you have great responsibility. So people, the government, people that represent the government, they're have much more responsibility to stand up and show their view, you know, say as they see it, not what they think's right, but they know what's right, so stand up for it instead of hiding behind some excuse. So well done to all those prisoners. I wish we could all do more and be like them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashad.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This motion is actually the heart of, which speaks of peace and justice. So obviously we know that peace isn't just something that we call for abroad, it's something that we practice at home. So it's down to how we treat our people. And in recent months, obviously, we've seen the individuals on remand who aren't yet convicted and driven to hunger strikes to make their voices heard. So that should concern all of us. Justice means fair process, humane treatment, and being heard before harm is done. So peace means choosing dialogue over suffering and dignity over neglect. Supporting this motion is about asking for exactly that. Engagement, humanity, and action to prevent further harm. Because if we truly believe in peace, then we have to stand for that justice everywhere and for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Turner, and then we'll go to Monday and... Oh, sorry, thank you. Councillor Turner.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lord Mayor. I mean, a few quick reflections, if I may, appreciating the sentiments behind the proposal of the motion and also the way that some in this chamber really personally affected, and I think are owed a duty of sort of solidarity from us all. First thing is just on the issue of the hunger strikers and particularly the arrests which are alluded to. I think what's gone wrong here is I can understand the serious allegations made about the group Palestine Action. I think a lot of people on demonstrations wanted to show solidarity with the people of Palestine for reasons which have been well documented. They chose to do so, holding up signs about Palestine action. I don't think at that moment they were endorsing the acts committed, and it meant an awful lot of people were arrested and imprisoned who, in my view, shouldn't have been, and it wasn't a good way for the law to work. And whether they need to change the law or what they need to do there, I don't know. But that's my view of what went wrong. It hadn't worked as it should have done. I do want to address the thrust of the comments that everyone who's a Labour councillor is somehow responsible for every aspect of policy, including foreign policy. My motivation to get involved in local politics was that when I went out on the doorstep many years ago as a young person, I found people tended to raise particularly local concerns. I thought, here's an opportunity to make a difference. And one way or another, that's been the focus of my activity. I've had many moments of sadness, including to do with foreign policy, over this time. If I can give another example of a moment that made me very sad, it was this leaving the European Union. I say to people, I couldn't stop that. I campaigned in the referendum, I lost, fair enough. What I can do is try and get young people from my ward over to Germany to experience it. And so you think about what you can do. In this council, we called for a ceasefire before that was government or for what I would call Labour Party policy. We heard from the Palestinian ambassador at our invitation. We welcomed the mayor of Ramallah, our twin city, to Oxford and flew the flag in on his visit. So those are things. And I think also we can work to try to, bring pressure on government when government policy is wrong. And we can work to try to keep communities together in Oxford. And so that's where I'm coming from in this. I do that as someone who at times has been beyond frustrated, angry, sad government policy which has been too slow to recognise the crimes being committed by the Israeli government. But that's where I'm coming from anyway, and I hope people will consider that as the motivation for many of us on this side.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, now, Councillor Sanderson, please.
Thank you. I'm really glad to hear from Councillor Jarvis the update about the hunger strikers who've all ended the hunger strike. But I'd like for it to also be remembered, as Councillor Smoten pointed out, Lord Mayor, that the prisoners on remand, as hopefully will be seen during a free and fair trial, were involved in an extremely serious attack with a police officer having her spine shattered by a sledgehammer, and we cannot fight violence with violence. Whilst I appreciate we must all have absolute respect for due process and justice, and that they have a fair trial, but I think we must look at this in the round as well. So I'll be abstaining from this motion.
Thank you. So now going to Councillor. Okay, we have several. So you're making a decision now. We have about 8 minutes left, so we will not get to the BMW motion if I take any more speakers on this. So,
Lord Mayor, could I propose a procedural motion to suspend standing orders to extend the debate by 15 minutes to enable people to speak on this and us to get through the Labour group motion as well?
yes, you can, if you have a seconder. Right, okay. Can we have a vote then on whether we're going to suspend standing orders to allow us to debate motions for an extra 15 minutes? All those in favour of that? Yep, thank you. We can do it a quick against, up against, and abstentions. Okay, so we are carrying on. Excellent. All right, in that case, I'm taking Councillor Chapman, and then one else. Yeah, thank you. And
I've been listening to the debate very carefully. I didn't know what I was going to do before I came into the room today, but I will be, on a free vote, be supporting the motion. And one of the things I just want to say about the prescription of Palestine action, the argument that's often made is that some of them committed dreadful things when they attacked a number of bases and things in recent times. But the more I think about that argument, and I understand what you said, and it was a terrible thing that happened to that individual, but the criminal law exists already. And those individuals could have been charged under the criminal law. They could have been charged with criminal damage, they could have been charged with assault or battery or grievous harm of some of that kind. So it's quite fallacious, the more I think about it, to justify the banning of Palestine action on the grounds that you do not have the right legal levers at your disposal to deal with a small number of individuals from that organisation who may commit criminal acts. And by prescribing them, you then criminalise a whole group of people who just want to protest about what's going on in Palestine. Deep down, that's what they want to do. They do it in a peaceful and respectful way. They do it often in silence because they're frightened to open their mouth. And I, as somebody who believes in freedom of speech very strongly, feel very uncomfortable about this. I don't support the government's position on this, by the way. I may be a Labour member and a member of this cabinet, but I do not give a blank cheque to this government on anything. Let me just say that for the record, right? Hang on,
Please.
I'm hardly silent when I'm speaking at the moment. Therefore, on all the grounds I've just made, I will be supporting the motion. I think it has a lot of merit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Powell.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I think, listened very carefully to the debate as well, and I think what I'd really like to draw out here is the way in which these kinds of overly broad prescription efforts operate in reality. It's exactly the point that Councillor Chapman has just raised, the sense that people say things when they don't even realise the implication of what they are saying, and then they end up being placed in a situation where they have displayed a reasonable suspicion of supporting a prescribed organisation. From a standpoint of basic legal propriety, the use of prescription legislation in this way is unethical, immoral, and utterly unsustainable. And I think it's really, really important to point out that following the High Court decision, it obviously remains, because of the appeal by the Home Secretary, the fact that the prescription remains in force. Literally hundreds of people accidentally committed a criminal offence because the effects of this legislation is not clear to the majority of the public. Frankly, in my day job, I work in a law department. I talk frequently about the effects of poorly drafted legislation, but no one could have done more to show the flaws of UK terror legislation than this government with the way in which they introduced that prescription. They made the argument that critical scholars have been making for decades abhorrently clear, and I think, the fact that we've had to see people utilising methods such as hunger strikes to point out this is grossly egregious. And, fundamentally, we absolutely should vote for this motion, but there really needs to be a much clearer dialogue about the unanticipated and unappreciated effects of this kind of prescription on free expression in this country. It is, in my view, a fundamental assault on the right of people to talk openly about the genocide in Gaza. And there are many people who were basically arrested for not in any way directly indicating support, but for making statements that a police officer felt indicated support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Malik.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I like to thank both of the people who bring the motion and the other, quite rightly so, but then again somebody trying to portray the picture. Well, we are councillors and we talk about local issue, the doorstep and everything. Equally, we have other moral responsibility. In our city, we have 2 members of parliament as well. So if you look at what went on, if you look at the Liberal Democrat side, Leila Moran, how she raised her voice during all this Palestinian issue, genocidal, etc. And we had another our MP who were a bit silent all the way because their leader said Israel have a right to defend. So we never forget that. And none of you stand up anywhere, social media or anything, when we talk about this side of the Labour Party, have said anything, yes, Palestinian got a right and everything. And I just was told, I just heard, we had welcome a mayor of Ramallah and we done all this. Well, how many times I have said in this council when we're going to raise a Palestinian flag? Pole is broken, is unsafe. We will do it now in the end when he will visit here. And very conveniently, just private visit here, then telling us, it's a security reason, so we can't openly welcome him, have a reception at Rose Hill. And that's how. And the twinning of Ramallah, if I want to remind the Labour group, of the chair of the Labour group, Where's Martin Rush, Hosnia? Where the other councillor? Because you wanted Rostov and Padua. You never wanted Ramallah in training unless we pressed that and you were forced to do that. And I remember those days. So here we are. So don't please tell us what we have and what not. If you're not strong enough to say to your Labour Party and your leader, then you're in it. And basically, you still today, Labour never called a genocide. It is a genocide. Simply, Labour Party is overtaken by the Zionist group and Zionist library group in United Kingdom.
Councillor Latif.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I, of course, support this motion and what is contained within. And I'm grateful to those members of council who have spoken passionately about this. I'm also grateful to those brave individuals who have done something that I wasn't brave enough to do, which was to speak out in this way and actually be paid the price of their liberty in order to do that. We all try to speak up in our own way, but some have taken greater steps, and they should be commended for that. I just want to reflect on one thing which will be an uncomfortable reflection, but I think it is worth reflecting in public, that there is a race element to this whole situation, that largely speaking, those brave souls have been white, middle-class individuals. And part of my reflection is, have they been of a different ethnicity? I hope, but I don't know, that we as a council would defend them in the same way, and I don't know that we would be having a similar motion. That's not to say that we shouldn't support the motion, but I just want to reflect on that reality. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're now, Councillor Munkongwe.
Thank you so much. I will be supporting the motion. I haven't spoken this before, but I'll do it now. And I speak as a voice from Africa. I speak from Africa with a message of humanity. War is not the answer. Innocent lives are lost, families destroyed, and futures stolen. Violence cannot be justified. True strength lies in dialogue and peace. Let us reject conflict, uphold humanity and dignity, and choose compassion over destruction. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now Councillor Mundy for seconding.
Thank you very much. Bear with me, councillors. I just want to go for a brief little history lesson with the suffragettes, only a little bit, yeah. So the suffragettes campaign included attempting to blow up a reservoir, to flood villages, detonating a bomb at Holloway Prison, bombing schools, bombing a Dublin theatre, and they're believed to have been responsible for the death of around 4 people, with actions that were taken for the rights of women to vote, of course, and for women's suffrage. Now, obviously, as has already been mentioned, there is a potential charge for criminal damage that could be laid at the door of Palestine Action activists. And it's not about comparing issues or comparing the actions of different groups, but I just think that we should be mindful, and that's politicians nationally as well as us here, of how history will look at the actions of agitators and the causes that they act for. Female MPs last July rightly stood proudly to recognise the suffragettes and the struggle for women's rights, and we've got a photo of our own MPs in Parliament in July 2025. We now need our lawmakers to reflect on the actions of Palestine Action activists and the urgency of the cause that they represent. Palestine Action stands against the participation of the UK in acts of war crimes and genocide in Gaza. This participation of this country has included the sale of components for warplanes and spy plane flights over Gaza from UK airbase in Cyprus. We know also the systematic destruction of facilities and infrastructure essential to life in Gaza, to the destruction of healthcare facilities, and the deliberate destruction of equipment in hospitals, including for neonatal care, which has happened with an intensity that is undeniably deliberate rather than incidental. We must stand by the right to protest, and expressing our support is so important. The mortal danger that the hunger strikers put themselves under as a result of the stance taken by the government is absolutely mind-blowing, really, and we have to put pressure on the government, and as we've referenced already, obviously members opposite do need to ensure that they take that particularly seriously, given that they are, of course, still members of the party that is in government. Now,
30 seconds.
I think we should be mindful of the fact that members on the Labour benches have voiced their support for the motion. I think that we should acknowledge that that's a positive thing, obviously, and it's good that you're ready to take that stand. But I do think that it's important to address not just the national government and the Labour Party's position, which you can't avoid having some level of involvement in that when you're a member of that political party and you're obviously a representative in council for that party. But also there's the actions of the Labour group locally.
Sorry, Councillor Mundy, that's the
Are
end
you
of
going
your
to come off
time.
there?
Sorry? Sorry, that's the end of your time. We're now going to move on to Councillor Jarvis to sum up.
Thank you. I will try and capture as much of it as possible, but there were a lot of contributions. Start by thanking Councillor Kayam for her comments and support for the motion, and crucially for making clear that this motion is not asking for anything remotely controversial, but for people's basic human rights to be upheld. Councillor Smoten, I appreciate your support for the motion. I would just raise a slight quibble with some of the comments that you made. Prescription of Palestine Action is obviously an important element of this, but it is, of course, really important for us to remember that the individuals who were on hunger strike were charged for activities that took place before Palestine Action was prescribed, and they were already being held on remand. And so prescription is part of the problem, but also the wider issue of how we're treated, our criminal justice system, and how people are treated within it and being held on remand indefinitely. I want to thank Councillor Jafari Mabini for your comments and your incredibly moving and powerful contribution to this debate, and for your continued and tireless solidarity with the Palestinian people, both in this chamber and outside of it. Also to thank both yourself and Councillor Rahman for making clear the government's complicity in the genocide in Gaza and indeed on Israel and the US's attacks on Iran. Councillor Arshad, very grateful for your support and for setting out how this motion is about humanity and harm prevention. Councillor Sanderson, I'm saddened to hear that you're going to be abstaining on this motion. I think the one thing that I would note is that this motion seeks to make no prejudgment as to the guilt of the individuals who have been on hunger strike and the prisoners that are on remand, simply to draw attention to and to address the conditions of their imprisonment and the prescription of the organisation they were a part of. I'd also like to thank Councillor Chapman for making very much that point as well. Councillor Powell, thank you for using your lawyerly ways to explain the unethical and unsustainable nature of prescription. And thank you to Councillor Latif for your reflections on this, which I think gives us some pause for thought. And also in relation to thinking about who is able to take the kinds of actions that people have done in relation to the prescription of Palestine Action, and the way that the criminal justice system treats people very differently based on their background and the colour of their skin. So I'll leave it there, but thank you everyone for the debate, and I hope that we will all be able to support this motion this evening.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Councillor Jarvis. So, in the interest of time, can we please go straight to a vote on this? Can I see all those in favour of this motion? Okay, any against and any abstentions? Thank you. So that motion is clearly carried. That leaves us with 8 minutes for the next one. Now, I know that I think the other group leaders are also keen to get to this motion. So I think if we do have time for it to be proposed and
Seconded, and then probably go to a vote.
Point of order, Lord Mayor. I'd like to move to next business. I don't think 8 minutes is long enough to have a proposal seconder and to have a robust discussion. And I think, if anything, we'll just be supporting electioneering material. Thank you.
Okay then, so we are just going to go with it in the 8 minutes then, unless there's any other proposal. No, fine. Okay, so
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I'd propose the move to next business.
There is no more business.
Well, then we end the business then, isn't it? Procedural point.
The meeting is extended until 2058, so we will carry on until then. So, over to Councillor Brown. Are you proposing... Sorry, Councillor Smith to propose...
Point of order, Lord Mayor. Can I just clarify? My understanding is that when a point of order is raised and a move to next business is put forward, that there should be a seconder and then the vote should be taken. I'm just interested to know why that's not happening in this instance.
I didn't see anybody seconding it.
I don't think you asked for it, Lord Mayor.
Okay, I can ask for a seconder. Okay, we can put it to the vote. Sorry, that you want to go immediately, just to end the meeting now. Okay, can we see all those in favour of ending the meeting now? Okay, all those against ending the meeting now? Right, thank you. Then we will go to Councillor Smith to propose the motion.
Thank you. I'll make this very brief. Our motion seeks to encourage better dialogue and understanding between the government, BMW and the local workforce to help secure the future of Plant Oxford as part of the Labour government's plans to increase the volume of vehicles made in the UK to over 1.3 million by 2035 and to defend jobs at Cowley as the UK makes the necessary transition away from the internal combustion engine and towards an all-electric future. And I accept the amendments put forward by the Lib Dem group and the Green group. So I hope we'll be able to, secure support for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And over to the seconder of the motion.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief as well. This came from a meeting that Councillor Smith and I had with conveners, Unite conveners at the car factory. It's not a motion that's come from meeting with the shareholders of BMW, it's from the union, and therefore you should all be backing it, because that's what the union is asking for, and they represent the workers at a Cowley plant who all live in all your wards. So back those workers and back the union.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we do have time for one or two. Councillor Mundy.
Yeah, just quickly, obviously, Green Group, we supported the resolutions of the motion, so we're glad you did bring the motion in support of our mini plant, and also glad that you took note of our comments in regards to the current targets that are set, and that we don't want a motion that suggests that we don't welcome those targets, because obviously that's what makes our car production fit for the future. So certainly a motion we're happy to support. Thank you.
Councillor Raymond.
Yeah, I mean, I support anything that helps the residents or businesses in Oxford. It is worth noting, though, lots of unions withdrawing funding from the Labour Party because they're not supporting unions anymore. So I'm glad that you've changed.
Thank you. Councillor Smoten.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll also be brief. Just to quickly highlight both of the amendments. Firstly, the importance of low friction or frictionless trade, especially with the EU, as a way to avoid our industries in general, but also in particular the car industry from ending up on the sidelines. And secondly, the importance of solving this problem by getting a transition promptly to EVs, rather than by kicking the can down the road in terms of the time expected when that transition is made. Because I feel that if the government were to set back the deadline when that transition is expected, then the industry will likely never take them seriously again and will expect that deadline to keep going back and back and back. So I feel it is necessary to remain steadfast behind the current expected timeline for the EV transition. Thank you.
Thanks. We have 2 minutes left. Sorry, Councillor Lateef, did you put your hand up? No.
I had Councillor Brown first, then Councillor Malik.
I just, as we have got a brief opportunity to speak, I just wanted to say that I think this really builds on the work that Annalise Dodds has already done with BMW, and I really welcome this motion. It's really important that we support a really big and very, very important, both historically and for the whole city, employer.
Thank you. I think Councillor Miles.
Yeah, so support this motion. And what I would say is that any conversations with unions, when we're talking about green growth, we want inclusive green growth. We know that it's a male-dominated industry, and we should be encouraging that in that transition to greater reliance on EV production, that the mini plan takes proactive steps to ensure that women are not left behind in that green growth transition process with the manufacturing jobs. So
thank you.
Should feature.
So we've really literally got 30. Councillor Malik, I can give you 30 seconds, and we're going to Councillor Smith to sum up for 30 seconds.
Yeah, very briefly, I just want to point out what the spokesman of BMW Group has said is a strong concern about the trajectory of the ZEV mandate and future sale requirement do not reflect current level of the customer demand of battery electric vehicle in the UK. We do not believe mandate create markets. The pace of the transition must be shaped by the real customer demand, supported by the right market condition and the competitive policy framework which enable a long-term investment. So basically, government also need to take a point. Not everybody wants to buy the electric and hybrid cars. So this is what their spokesman are saying.
Thank you very much. Okay, back to Councillor Smith to sum up.
I'd just like to thank everybody for their comments. Yes, and as has been said, it's there's clearly more to do from the government, more things to consider. It's not just about having a mandate. You know, there's measures. We need to address the issue of tariffs. There's work to do on bringing energy costs down. There's lots that needs to be done to stimulate demand for domestically produced cars. So yes, that's what we hope they'll be able to discuss when they get together, as the motion asks for. Thank you.
Thank you. So can we now put this motion to the vote, please? Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. And any against? And any abstentions? So the motion is carried. Thank you very much. That is the end of the meeting. My last one.